At this moment, the world has entered the Ice Age. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 226. December 8th, the 7th year of the Ice Age, is a day worth remembering on this day. This day is not the day when the super project was formed, nor was it the day when the fight against disaster succeeded. This day, in fact, is just an ordinary day, but it is also not an ordinary day. Because on this day, all workers and labor forces across the country have signed the certificate of life and death. No one persecutes them. Everyone is voluntary, because everyone knows that the truly catastrophic moment is coming. After 10 days, if you can carry the past, then the future can be expected. If you can't resist it, if there is no if, everyone must go all out. Glacier barriers, separation walls, and continental barriers, as key lines of defense, have become the main targets of the national labor force. And in these three places, it is the most dangerous place. The first group of people who arrived took the airship. From a high altitude, they saw the waves surging, and waves of huge waves were set off, constantly slamming against the steel wall of the mainland barrier, making waves of muffled thunder. Although the water level has dropped to 30 meters and the height of the huge waves has also dropped to 80 meters, it is too difficult to work in this environment. Zhao Quan, the person in charge sitting on the airship, looked extremely solemn. As a forward, he came to survey the specific situation, and then made a plan with others, and finally discussed the plan, rushed to the large army to distribute the plan, and then the workers carried out according to his plan. However, Zhao Quan stopped speaking at this moment. Sitting next to him is the ocean professor, professors on nature, the dean of the Department of Architecture, the professor of the Department of Mechanical Engineering, etc., and their faces are very solemn at the moment, and they all remain silent. In the end, Zhao Quan broke the peace and said, "This mission is too dangerous. I can't guarantee everyone will return. Yes, it's too dangerous." The dean of the Department of Architecture took the conversation, and then he changed the conversation and said, "But now that we have chosen this path, everyone has already figured it out clearly. Xihai. For everyone, we have no retreat. Yes, okay, start making plans." Without saying too much, time passed by every minute and every second, and finally before the arrival of the large forces, all plans were worked out and passed the audit of midnight, and formally distributed to each leader of the team. It only took a long time. The most dangerous place is the steel barrier on the mainland, and the glacier barrier, that suffers the least damage, because it serves as the third line of defense. Almost all impacts are blocked by the first two lines of defense. Therefore, half of the people are assigned to the mainland steel barrier, to be responsible for repairing here. When everyone arrived here in an airship or a giant iceberg ship, everyone was shocked and speechless. A huge wave rises up to 80 meters, constantly slamming on the steel wall of the barrier on the mainland, making waves of muffled thunder. Like a beast, it will swallow all of them in the next second, and everything is everywhere. The ocean is full of water, and the waves are turbulent, rolling over everything. You can experience all of this today. Even if you die, it's worth it. After I went to heaven, I told my dead dad that his son participated in an unprecedented repair and his son saved a big country, bragging. Are you alone to save our country? Ha 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 ha. A burst of heroic sound filled the iceberg giant ship, and other people also laughed. The atmosphere at this moment is quite a feeling of drinking wine as a song. Everyone's mood is ignited by laughter, blood is boiling, and with an order, let's do it. First of all, the airships are at the forefront. The airships were united at a distance of about 100 meters from the steel wall of the mainland barrier, stopped at a certain height, and then dumped the materials. The roads fall down like a Milky Way. Very beautiful. It's just this scene no one can appreciate in the environment. At this moment, everyone is preparing. These materials are used to make the glacier barrier, and the materials used are also the materials used by the iceberg giant ship, which can freeze the ice body and the water surface. However, these materials are too scarce to freeze the ocean in front of the entire eastern barrier, which is not realistic. Therefore, they are used in important positions. The materials can be poured to freeze the dumped position in a short time, and then it is a race against time. The mounting bracket is used to repair the steel wall of the mainland barrier. Zero fine flowers. Therefore, when the material is dumped in the ocean, an amazing scene is formed in an instant, and the ocean is artificially frozen. This scene is a miracle, because in the civilization period, there has never been a project that can freeze the ocean and no one can travel and repair under the impact of that tsunami. Point. The next link is handed over to the people in the next link, and everyone starts racing against time. Mechas, cranes, and other tools are all launched, racing against time, and about an hour later, the entire frozen ocean area was unsealed, and then, the majestic waves hit the mainland steel barrier. The stents weighed in the ocean, and the workers were hit by the tsunami waves, like ants, although they were tied to the stent, but with the sway of the stent and the impact of the ocean, they all looked like bungee jumping. From top to bottom, they all trembled. Looking down, the turbulent water is like an abyss. Just looking at it makes you dizzy. With soft legs and soft hands, it's so cruel. Not only have to face the weather of -180 degrees, but also deal with the oncoming waves, and feel the impact of the tsunami firsthand. People with strong mental will can't hold it. Point. But there is no way. After the third line of defense, there is their home, and their country has no retreat. Point. Keep going. Dry. Everyone was clenching their teeth and insisting, letting the sea water hit their faces, and they were cold and trembling. Point. Around the entire key area of the eastern barrier, the same scene happened. Point. Against the hard black walls washed by the sea, an epic sense of tragic and majesty is oncoming. Point. At this moment, in the sky above, there seems to be a newly created song during the Ice Age, to sing praises to the east. The galloping Yangtze River rolled up crystal clear waves. Thousands of miles of grassland echoes the affectionate sound of Mataukin. 60 spring and autumn have passed. Jiang Shenwan Lihang, grow my yan huang, nurture me China, and when we are successful, we must report to China. Died. Chapter 227. On November 10th, the 7th year of the Ice Age, the 8th day of the countdown. Point. Globally, the huge waves of the tsunami began to recede, the sea level began to fall, and everything was developing in a good direction. But everyone knows that the surface at this moment is just preparing for the final blow. Point. The melting of the northern and southern glaciers could no longer be stopped, and large tracts of the collapsed ice layer fell, splashing in the ocean, instantly setting off waves of several hundred meters, and then spreading around. Point. There are no islands, continents, or existences nearby. They are all submerged in the ocean. The endless ocean is desperate. Eastern technology can freeze the ocean and connect barriers. It was built in the weather of -180 degrees. At this moment, the weather of the glaciers in the north and south has reached more than 200 degrees below zero. Here, the environment is extremely cruel. No country's machinery in the 237 countries can enter, even if the East wanted to use its own technology to prevent the melting of the North and South glaciers. It was powerless. The East has not developed a machine that can work at -200 degrees. It's too cruel. It's 8 days from the end of the world. Point. Ying Ziyue stood on the 100-meter high fence with several coffee bags beside him. Ying Ziyue has been looking out the window, always watching. Zhao Guofeng walked in and out from the outside. Winning midnight has always been in this state. Zhao Guofeng couldn't help but said, "Group leader, rest. You haven't slept for several nights. It's okay." After a pause, Ying Ziyue said, "Group leader, rest. Next, there are still many things." Zhao Guofeng couldn't help but said, "It's okay." Ying Ziyue waved his hand again. Hey, Zhao Guofeng didn't know the temper of winning the midnight, and the other party said one thing is true, so Zhao Guofeng stopped persuading, but went into the main topic. Team leader, the trend of glaciers collapse in the north and south is inevitable. The last wave of tsunami impact will occur in 8 days. At that time, the world will face a super tsunami. Unfortunately, we can't reach the north and south glaciers. If there are tools available, then we can bring materials to stop the glaciers from collapsing. Buckle at this time, the door suddenly sounded, and after getting permission from Win Midnight, the man walked in. Group leader, a message from the Western Rose Country, say they have a way all workers in the East are invested in the renovation of the infrastructure, especially the 3 lines of defense that guard the East. The first line of defense, the mainland barrier steel wall, half of the labor force is concentrated here, and the remaining part is scattered to repair the separation wall. Part of it is used to continue the construction of the glacier barrier. The giant iceberg ship travels with seawater, unloading all the iceberg glaciers from the inland, and then rebuilding it with cranes and other tools, to make up for the collapse and loopholes caused by the impact of seawater behind the iceberg barrier are coastal cities. At this moment, part of the coastal cities are submerged, and part of the construction of underground passages is blocked to prevent seawater from being irrigated. As the weather of -180 degrees began, a part of the sea was blocked by ice, and coastal cities were also blocked by ice. The coastal cities were submerged by seawater, 3/4 were still above the sea, and 1/4 was covered by seawater. After freezing, the scene was amazing. 3/4 of the city is still on the ice, and everyone driving in a blizzard chariot can reach the middle floors of some residential buildings. At this time, everyone can't help but imagine how the residents of coastal cities live here. Most of the workers and laborers who came to participate in the construction are residents of coastal cities, so watching this scene, they don't even mention how emotional they are. Some people say that one day they will come back here. After arriving at the destination, everyone started to work, racing against time, regardless of the severe cold and the bitter sea. All of them were continuously engaged in construction. And this scene was quickly captured by the satellite of Rose Country. At this moment, the Rose Country and the Eagle Country are in deep and fiery waters. The seawater rushes with their headaches, and there is a sound of muffled thunder from time to time, and the sound of impact is louder than each, like a knife hanging above their heads, going to fall at any time. 0. The project has achieved the ultimate and perfect reinforcement, but the faces of the high levels of Rose Nation are gloomy, for fear of accidents like Eagle Nation. Their dungeons are hollow. Once there is a gap, that tsunami above their heads will tear apart. The gap widened, and all the seawater was irrigated in. At that time, even if they had the ark, they would not be able to hold so many people, and they would be left with 2 underground states. It seems that it is time to show our whole cards. The new leader of the Rose Country, Minister Maximum, said, "Minister, think twice. This is a last whole card. If once it is out, then we will have no whole card to use." Minister Rose Nation hesitated. He did have a whole card in his hand. He didn't even know the previous alliance Eagle Nation, only he and a few high-level officials. This is the biggest reliance of Rose Nation in the end, so it is not a last resort, and it is absolutely impossible to give out the last whole card. Wait then, report Minister, this is a video from the East. The man hesitated to speak and stopped, or he didn't know how to say it. Maximum took the Eastern video from the satellite, and then he was shocked beyond words by the scene in front of him. At this moment, Dongfang is not like them, waiting for death, but continues to invest in infrastructure. This scene seems to be no surprise, because Dongfang has been like this before, but this is under the circumstances of braving the tsunami and huge waves. From -180 degrees, it's more cruel, more difficult, more. However, Dongfang devoted himself to manpower and machinery in order to survive. Obviously death is doomed, but the East does not compromise. Maximum was shocked to the point that he didn't know what to say, and for the first time, he admired Dongfang. At the same time, Minister Rose Country finally made up his mind. It's the last moment now. What use is there to keep the whole cards? Furthermore, how many people can this trump card retain? It's better to cooperate with the East. The East will never put its own country in danger. Chapter 228. The West says there is a way. When he heard the news, Xiao Guofeng thought he had heard it wrong. It is estimated that the West should have reached the end of the world. After all, they have asked the East for help before. Didn't expect that there is still a way. Finally, can't help but expose the cards. Ying Ziyue said, exposure to the whole cards? Xiao Guofeng said, and then he suddenly realized that he did not say, because they knew each other well, that the West would not have become a developed country if they had no whole cards. The West still has their whole cards yet to show. I don't know what their whole cards are. Xiao Guofeng was very curious, winning the Midnight Smile, did not answer Xiao Guofeng's question, and instead asked, how does the West plan to cooperate with us? Group leader, are you really planning to cooperate with Rose Country? Because the West had previously proposed to cooperate with the East, it was rejected by Win Midnight. How do they want to cooperate with us? Ying Ziyue continued to ask without answering Xiao Guofeng's words. Xiao Guofeng said, he needs materials, that we can freeze the iceberg barrier, and we will deliver it to the door personally. Then, they also put forward other conditions, hoping to provide living materials and resources 02 maximum. Minister of the Rose Country lived like a year while waiting for the news from the East Point. Minister Maximum also has a hot face, because he has proposed to cooperate with Danfang more than 1 or 2 times before, but he did not expect Danfang to reject all of them. Now he proposes to cooperate with Danfang again, and Maximum feels very embarrassed. Point in the civilization period, although the East had a large population, its overall strength was not as good as that of the Rose Country. In the eyes of the Rose Country, the East was ignorant, well developed, and lagging behind in development, and so on. It was simply not enough to be regarded as an opponent. Point. However, this is a country they despised. After the arrival of the Ice Age, they used actions to prove to them the power of the country. Point. Most people in the West still do not recognize that the East is not what it used to be. The leaders of the Eagle Nation and the Rose Nation gradually regard the East as their true opponent and gradually recognize the strength of the East. Point. Maximum looked at the window. No, now they are in the dungeon. After entering the dungeon, Maximum has not seen the sun or the sky for a long time. All become luxury. Some aspects of the East are worth learning, Maximum said. He admitted for the first time, however, Danfang Kang has the technology, but there is no way to reach the north and south glaciers. It is still not as good as us. Immediately, Maximum said confidently, the coal of Aro's country can survive, even if it is over 200 degrees below zero. If there is only one country left on the earth, it will be Aro's country. When the Ice Age is over, we will be from the Rose Country everywhere on the earth. At that time, what will it be like? Our land is more than tens of thousands of kilometers longer. The earth will be a land. The more Maximum said that he was full of confidence, his expression was passionate, and he was also infected with other people, and he couldn't help but imagine the scene. Maximum said point, and the sea roared above their heads, and they set off huge waves, wave after wave, and continued to slap. Report to Minister, there is news from the East. The West did not wait long, because this has reached the most critical moment. Point. The subordinate in charge of sending the message was difficult to say. His face was a bit ugly, and he didn't know whether to say or not. Say, come on. How did Danfang reply? Did they agree to our terms? I knew that the East must cooperate with us. Everyone was babbling, and the dark clouds above their heads seemed to have been washed away a lot. Danfang said that, if we want to cooperate, it is okay, but we need to show sincerity. And our conditions. They all refused to agree. What happened? As the voice fell, all the senior officials of the Rose Country were surprised one after another. When is it? Danfang is still rejecting them? Don't take them so seriously. Suddenly, the top executives were very angry, including Maximum, also very angry. Sincerity? They have shown their sincerity. They have sought cooperation with Danfang again and again before. Who knows, they were rejected by Danfang. Danfang needs sincerity. They also showed sincerity and exposed their final cards. However, Danfang said they were not sincere. Question mark? Who is insincere? Danfang is looking for a dead end. The East will definitely pay for their arrogance and ignorance. The East deceives too much. East. Maximum was speechless. He and other senior leaders thought that his sincerity was enough. Why did Danfang reject them again? Damn it, really damn it. Otherwise, shall we go directly to the East? Someone suggested point. The most savage way is very much in line with the style of the Rose Country. Point. However, the civilization of the East is no longer what it used to be, and it is no longer a weak and pedantic country, let alone the East of the Ice Age. It stood on the surface of the earth and survived the disaster for 6 years. In full circumstances, the East must have their means, so this is simply unrealistic, and the war now is completely self-defeating. Discouraged, but there is no other way but to get angry. Rose Country is in this state at this moment. Really very angry. This is probably the biggest loss I have ever eaten in the history of Rose State, and it is not a loss. Anyway, I can't get out of my breath, but I have eaten it several times, and it's still the same thing. Fuck. The East will pay for their actions. Maximum gritted his teeth. On November 12th, the 7th year of the Ice Age, there was a 6-day countdown above the entire sky. It is extremely depressing. Although the blizzard is gradually decreasing, the wind is getting stronger and stronger. Between the entire sky, various sounds are mixed together to form a cold and tragic tune. Because there are only the last 6 days left in the world. After 6 days, all mankind will no longer exist. Whether it is the East standing on the surface or the West hiding in the ground, all countries will no longer exist, and the Earth will be an endless ocean. Maybe a few years later, the mainland islands will reappear their original appearance, and then the old civilization will reappear, and everything will be presented in front of the new mankind. Chapter 229. Maybe there will be no human beings. Maybe the Earth will enter the next cycle. After millions of years, it will evolve from apes to humans, step by step, from barbarism to civilization, from war to peace, and from the development of *9999 home to developed countries, and then the new ice age comes again. The longest lifespan of human beings is only over 100 years old, so it's useless to think so much. It's better to take every step of the present steadily. For example, how to deal with the super tsunami. 6 days later, everyone didn't want to die, or else they wouldn't build many projects just to survive. After a stalemate for 2 days, Rose Country compromised again. The Rose Country once again sent a message to the East saying that their demands could be reduced, and they wanted to cooperate with the East with 100,000 points of sincerity. The news was spread to the Eagle Nation. Roddy didn't expect that the Rose Nation would be so humbled to this extent, right? Did the Rose Nation have reached an alliance with them? Why now seek cooperation from the East? Roddy clearly remembers their alliance agreement, and they did their best to build a space station, which will be the last piece of pure land for mankind. The result to it is the situation. What exactly is going on? Roddy immediately questioned his subordinates, but the subordinates were not clear. Rose Country, what are you going to do? What conditions do they want to cooperate with the East? This the subordinates don't know, because this is currently a private transmission. The Eagle Nation can know that the Rose Nation seeks cooperation from the East, which is the limit they can know. Because they are in underground castles and dungeons, they rely on satellites for the above news, not to mention the transmission of news between countries. Therefore, the Eagle Nation can know this news because of the high level of the Rose Country. When the Rose Nation senior officials made this decision, it seemed that they did not deliberately conceal the Eagle Nation. The Eagle Nation will eventually know that they have reached a cooperation with the East, but the current situation seems a bit embarrassing. Maximum received a question from Roddy and immediately became angry. All this is because of the East, because the East has rejected them again. This is the 6th time that the East has rejected it so far. Maximum has already been very sincere on behalf of the Rose Country. As a result, the East has rejected them again. Dongfang. Maximum gritted his teeth. His face flushed. His heart, liver and lungs hurt. In the end, Maximum spit out some information about the Eagle Nation, but he didn't even return it. Roddy, who had been waiting for a day, didn't wait for Maximum's news. Roddy immediately felt something. He joined the high-level meeting and finally came to the conclusion that Rose Country must have a whole card they don't know, and this whole card may be related to everything at present. The survival of mankind may still have something to do with the East. Otherwise, why would the Rose Country repeatedly propose to cooperate with the East? Roddy gradually approached the truth and sent a message to Maximum again. This time, Maximum replied, if you can't survive the immediate disaster, then even building 100 space stations will be of no use. Roddy quickly received a reply. Seeing these news, he was lost in thought. So, does Rose Country mean to terminate the cooperation? When Midnight received the news that the Rose Nation and the Eagle Nation alliance broke down and the Rose Nation resources were withdrawn from the space station, he did not expect that at the last critical moment, the Rose Nation and the Eagle Nation would come here. So, I verified a sentence. The catastrophe is imminent. Do you fly separately? At that time, Ying Ziyue received news from Rose Country again. At this moment, there are still 4 days left before the global super tsunami and the complete unblocking of the northern and southern glaciers. Every second that elapses may represent the death of tens of thousands of people in the disaster 4 days later. Therefore, the Rose Country is completely crazy. The space station does not yet know when it will be successfully established, nor when humans will be able to station in. Everything is unknown, and the most important thing now is to live first. This is already the 10th time that the Rose Country has offered to cooperate with Dongfang, who is winning Midnight and behind him. No, it is a unilateral prayer instead of cooperation. Dongfang has refused it 9 times, and Rose Country has not given up. At this moment, there is only one message from the Kingdom of Roses. For the survival of all mankind, the Kingdom of Roses is willing to go all out to cooperate with the East. On November 13th, the 7th year of the Ice Age, there were 3 days left in the countdown. The Rose Country announced that it will work with the East to respond to the melting trend of the glaciers in the North and South. In a few words, the Rose Country did not intend to send it out. The refusal from the East made all the high levels faceless, and everyone went from gnashing their teeth to silently compromising. If it is not posted in the last 3 days, fearing that the people will not be able to bear it and choose to die or commit suicide. Taking various factors into consideration, the senior officials of the Rose Country put a message down and issued a bulletin. But the people of the Rose Nation are not aware of the compromise of the high levels of the Rose Nation. They think that the East will ask them for help, and that the East has reached its end. East, choosing our Rose Country is the most correct choice. Tina, Dongfang, I thought how strong I was. I didn't expect to ask us for help in the end. John. If I remember correctly, before, our country wanted to cooperate with the East, but the result was rejected by the East. How can we still dare to come to the door? Dex, it's nothing more than the East still shutting down the country. Don't hesitate to open the mainland barrier to welcome our western population. Yodam, for the sake of God's face, please forgive Dongfang. These idiots are so self-righteous. Maximum had a terrible headache and his face rose directly into a tomato. Each additional comment like this was like a slap on the face. Painful, numb, and ashamed. In short, Maximum's emotions were extremely complicated. The same goes for a group of senior officials in the Rose Country. They can't wait to let the people shut up. Really, please stop talking about it. Bunch of idiots. At the same time, the East also issued an announcement, and there is no need for the East to conceal its cooperation with the West. As soon as the announcement was made, everyone immediately fell into a heated discussion. But it is the words of the West that make the netizens and the East feel angry, since it is said that the East has taken the initiative to ask the West for help. What a big joke. I'm afraid this is the biggest joke since the beginning of the Ice Age. No, after the civilization period, everyone has heard the biggest joke. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 230. Let the West talk about it, and there are still 3 days to count down, and the labor force of the workers across the East is racing against time. Even if the country has made plans for the northern and southern glaciers, the labor force of the workers in the East is still fighting on the front line. As the sea level drops, the tsunami waves slowly recede. At this time, the steel wall on the mainland barrier has slowly recovered calm, and the degree of difficulty has been greatly reduced. The workers took a sigh of relief and began to talk about the first cooperation between the East and the Rose Kingdom in the North-South Glacier battle plan. Worker Li Hang said, "Have you heard about our cooperation with Rose Country?" I heard it, but what is ridiculous is that since the West thinks we are asking them for help, This is really a big joke. If they know the truth, they really want to know the look on their faces. Sooner or later, the West will know. Okay, take a break. Hurry up after the rest. This scene was quickly left behind by everyone, and then took a rest, and reinvested in the infrastructure renovation. Hyams is from the Rose Country. He is a professor of construction. He has 20 years of experience and teaching experience. He has a place in the construction department. Later, he disappeared from public view. After receiving a secret plan point, it was 7 years since he disappeared. His friends and family all died for him at 240. Everyone didn't know that Hyams was not dead. He disappeared for a national mission point now. Hyams has finally escaped from the secret mission. No, if there is no cooperation between the West and the East, then Hyams may continue to hide point hidden in a dark dungeon. There is no sunshine all day long, and even the air is dull, humid, and oppressed, even including eating less food every day. This kind of day is undoubtedly desperate point thinking that this would continue forever. On this day, Hyams received the task and asked to dispatch the coal to the East Confluence point. Dispatch the coal? Go to Eastern Confluence? What is the country going to do? Although Hyams, the captain, crew, and construction workers were all individually assigned to a small dungeon, the deaths and damages counted from the Rose Country after the triple disaster were not counted for this third dungeon. Inside point, although they are alone in a small dungeon, they can face the outside world. Hyams and the captain, crew, and construction workers are very clear about it. This is their only fun in the dungeon point in their spare time. Hyams and others have been paying attention to external affairs. They have witnessed the disappearance of one country after another from the news. The once developed countries finally disappeared in that tsunami. The sub-zero air was covered by icebergs and glaciers. The earth was submerged by the ocean and then swept by the extreme cold. Both the Eagle Kingdom and the Eagle Country went underground, and the East still stood on the surface and continued to live on the surface with the wind and snow until the 7th year. Looking at the East, one project after another is formed. One's own country continues to reinforce the dungeons, and the Eagle Nation develops a space program. Every remaining nation is fighting hard for survival. This continued from the initial excitement to empathy, to numbness, and then to today's doubts, excitement, etc. This small dungeon was finally opened. The location of Hyams and them is on the high ground, not yet submerged by the tsunami. As the small dungeon is opened, a long lost feeling rushes toward your face. At this moment, it was -degrees above the surface, and it was extremely cold. The sky was dim, and the blizzard fell rustlingly. Wherever you looked, above the earth, there was a vast expanse of whiteness, connecting the sky and the earth, illuminated by the snow. The sky seemed to have turned white. The sound of waves crashing can be faintly heard in my ears. Intermittently. The arc used by the colossal amphibious ship can slide in the water, or on the ice, and can also dive into the bottom of the water, which is similar to a giant iceberg ship. The materials it uses can enable it to work at -200°C. However, because of the scarcity of materials, Rose Country did not popularize it. Almost all resources are concentrated on the coal to propose this. Name the proposed professor at this moment. Hyams took the people and drove the coal to the East Point. After coming out of the dungeon, the Ketu first glided through the ice and snow. The huge Ketu can carry 6,000 people. At the same time, the internal facilities are complete. In addition to food is now very precious. Everyone even has a little breadcrumbs. Not willing to waste, Hyams sat on the bow, and in his line of sight, the sky and the earth were white. The people on this ship are the Roses people who have successfully landed on the ground in recent years. Therefore, how precious is the breath of freedom. After regaining freedom, I'm afraid that no one on this ship will want to go back underground. In order to encourage the people, the Rose Country adopted a live broadcast method. The live broadcast of the coal began from the underground city and then headed to the ocean to the eastern road. When the netizens of Rose Country saw the coal coming out of the dungeon, they couldn't help but talk about it. They were extremely proud of their country. Look, this is the strength of our country. It is extremely powerful. As a member of the Rose Country, I'm very proud. Yes, our country is now the most powerful country on earth, and I'm very proud. One day, we will return to the surface. The move of the Rose Country was really useful. The people were inspired and encouraged to face the disaster 3 days later, no longer despair and decadence, and cheered up again. However, the decision of the Rose Nation has offended the Eagle Nation. In order to survive, the Rose Nation broke with the Eagle Nation alliance and exposed its final trump card. In the eyes of the Eagle Nation, the Rose Nation simply did not have the sincerity to cooperate with them. The Rose Council regrets it. Roddy and a team of senior executives are also watching the live broadcast. Roddy snorted coldly. The room was depressed. The Rose Country live broadcast continues. Sims was sitting in the Ark. Next to him was the captain. He was controlling the Ark and was heading east. He has been hiding in the dungeon for 7 years. After coming out of the dungeon, the changes outside can be described as earth-shaking. As far as he is located, except for the icebergs and glaciers, he has not seen a single building. Even a person with a good sense of direction, without the guidance of a building, is estimated to be directly lost in this world, and soon die in the weather of -180 degrees. After driving for a while, the coal flopped and plunged into the water all at once. Chapter 231. Leader Ying. Everything is ready. At this time, on the 100-meter high fence of Yanjing, in the meteorological observation room, Zhao Feng opened the door of the meeting room and said, "It is good." Ying Ziyue turned around and walked out of the meeting room with Zhao Feng, then put on winter clothes and an oxygen mask, and boarded the airship that was ready. The military green airship was looming in the clouds and mist, and the words yellow and yan on the airship gradually became clearer with the clouds and mist. In the airship that Ying Ziyue took, he went to the mainland steel barrier and met with the coal in the Rose Country. The first cooperation between the two. No, it is not so much cooperation as it is the unilateral cooperation of the Rose Country with the East. Netizens in Rose Country still don't know that. In order to survive, high-level officials sent 9 messages to the East, but they were all rejected by the East. Hyams came out of the dungeon on the Coal's Ark. After passing by the iceberg and glacier, Coal sailed into the ocean. At this moment, the tsunami trend has gradually weakened. Therefore, the Coal did not suffer much hindrance, and waited until it was on the ocean. After driving some distance, the Coal dived. This is another function of the Coal. It can dive into the bottom of the water and accelerate its navigation, which is similar to that of an aircraft carrier. When the Coal took people to dive into the water, it began to accelerate. At this moment, the endless ocean was only the Coal Ark, and the vast ocean, lonely and cold, was blowing. There are not many living creatures in the ocean. Otherwise, they die in the extremely cold weather, or they are no longer suitable for survival due to lack of oxygen. Even the plants disappeared. There are only large stones and other debris. The ocean floor is withered. As he sailed, Hyams, who was with the captain, saw buildings approaching. These are all buildings from the civilization period, and now they are all submerged by seawater, and they are all sunken underground forever. Hyams recognized one of the buildings, which was a global landmark in the civilization period. Whenever someone came to travel, he took a photo with this building, as if he could not prove that he had been here without taking a photo. Once, it was very prosperous, and also a famous tourist destination, with people coming and going, and the economy was developed. The residents here earned the golden slam, because it is a tourist attraction. They never imagined that the Ice Age would come to the world and eventually be completely destroyed. A sorrow hit his face, and there was silence in the Ark. Especially seeing that one's own country is also submerged in the ocean. Familiar tall buildings, familiar hotels, familiar stores, etc. Everyone can't help but wet their eyes. Because of being surrounded by a wall, Hyams can only see wind turbines higher than the residential building, and cannot see the scene inside the wall. But this is shocking enough. Around the wall, a group of people are busy building. In order to meet the super tsunami, everyone braved the cold and cruel environment, racing against time. For the first time seeing a scene that could only be seen on TV before, Hyams rubbed his eyes and said, "This is an island. If I remember correctly, this should be an artificial island built by the East. I didn't expect it. This is real." Himes muttered to himself. Then, an even more amazing scene happened. Himes saw a huge ice-breaking aircraft carrier, and a new type of aircraft carrier, iceberg giant ship, sailing one after another near them. Very spectacular. Zero find flowers. Although Himes cannot watch it up close, it can also be estimated that these aircraft carriers and icebergs are huge, and can accommodate tens of thousands of people, which is larger than the coal on which they ride. These ice-breaking aircraft carriers and new aircraft carriers once appeared on the broadcast of Roseland. Their role is not only to accommodate the population, their biggest role is to break the ice surface and resist the tsunami. These aircraft carriers are evil. Himes murmured to himself. The picture in his mind emerged. The sky was white, the endless whiteness. Even the ocean was frozen. The ice-breaking aircraft carrier appeared, making sky-shaking noises, and the huge ice surface was cracked wherever it went. The collapse of the blocks, the breaking of the thick ice layer, and the smashing into the sea one by one, is very spectacular, and even more spectacular is the ice-breaking aircraft carrier used to clear icebergs and glaciers. When the ocean was unsealed, huge tsunamis hit all parts of the world. All the remaining countries were thinking about how to survive, but the East was thinking about how to fight with all their strength. The birth of a new type of aircraft carrier is larger than the aircraft carrier in the civilized period. It is used to resist the tsunami. The waves rise in the waves, and the waves are raised about 100 meters, 200 meters, and 300 meters. It's not waiting. It's comparable to high-rise buildings, banked to collided like this. Seen from a high altitude, the turbulent waters and giant aircraft carriers collided with each other, making sky-shaking noises, which was very spectacular. He only watched the project of the East in the broadcast, and when he experienced it personally, Himes could not say anything. It turns out that all of this is real. Himes muttered to himself. As the coal continued to sail, Himes saw the sea-crossing bridge like a long dragon, spanning 3 large seas. How many kilometers long, extending into the snow and fog? I don't know. Where is the end point in the Ice Age, when all kinds of disasters often occurred at sub-zero degrees? There were buildings that could stand on the ground and were so majestic that Himes felt that he could no longer describe it in any language. Then, Himes saw the steel wall of the Continental Barrier played many times in the East. Death chapter 232. Then, Himes saw the steel wall of the Continental Barrier played many times in the East. The great super project, Oriental netizens once said, can be comparable to the historic buildings of the Great Wall, but Himes can only be watched on TV, and everything he knows is obtained from the internet. Before witnessing it with his own eyes, Himes believed that all this is an Eastern exaggeration. What is 4,000 kilometers long, guarding the entire East? What super project? Beyond the period of human civilization, and so on. Everything is an Eastern exaggeration. In order to prove that they are Eastern, it can stand on the surface of the earth. In order to establish the image of the Oriental stalwart. However, when Himes witnessed it with his own eyes, at this moment, his brain was blank. Himes seemed to have returned to the scene when he was in the dungeon and watched this scene on TV. At that time, Himes felt that all these were special effects from the East. At this moment, 24/0 Himes could not wait to slap himself twice. When he saw with his own eyes that a thick steel Continental Barrier, standing high in the dim sky, like the most burly soldier, guarding the continent, Himes couldn't help but be surprised. My God, is this the project of the East? For a long time, Himes said, yes. This is the project of the East. The captain murmured to himself. He was also shocked. The crew was as shocked as the captain and Himes. At this moment, they were all squeezed into the window, and the window was so small that it could only accommodate 2 or 3 people to watch. The wall of steel, I don't know how much it spreads, stands tall, deeply rooted in the earth. The huge waves slapped against the steel wall, wave after wave, one after another, and the wall of steel let the huge waves hit, stand tall. That's where Himes looks. No wonder it is called the steel wall of the mainland barrier, and it is called the first line of defense. When the tsunami came, the steel wall of the Continental Barrier blocked the tsunami. reducing the pressure on the separation wall and the glacier barrier behind it, and also guarding every city in the East Point. How many homes, land, and countries flooded by that tsunami are buried under the ocean, and the East has fought against it, and has been holding on. Now the 7th year is about to pass, and it is still standing above the surface, all because of the existence of the continental barrier. No wonder it is called a super project, a building that surpasses the civilization period point. By seeing it with his own eyes, Hyams believed that the East was not an exaggeration, but a real occurrence. How did the Eastern project come into being? Then, Hyams saw one by one Eastern people like little ants braving the extreme cold of -180 degrees, withstanding the impact of huge waves, in such a difficult environment, using various tools, clinging to the steel, the wall. What are they doing? Hems frowned and said, "It should be being renovated, right?" After a pause, the captain swallowed. Renovate? Under these circumstances? How is this possible? Him's eyes widened. He stared at those people with the binoculars, and saw that they were holding tools in their hands under the condition of -180 degrees. He personally tapped on the wall. Astonished, shocked, surprised, when complicated emotions flashed through Hyam's eyes. Hyams put down his binoculars and did not continue watching. At this moment, Hyams really didn't know what to say. This is the first time he has seen a country with such a high cohesion, not afraid of hardship, not afraid of life and death. East. Suddenly, Hyams had a strong idea. He wanted to enter this barrier wall. He wanted to see the super project in the East with his own eyes, and he wanted to know what kind of state the people of the East are now living in. Very, very much. Professor Hyams, look at it. The captain spoke again. Hyams recovered and followed the direction the captain pointed, and then he saw that in such a cruel environment, no tool except satellites could fly in the sky. And military green airships appeared. NS Point and the leading airship, sitting Win Midnight and others. They are meeting with the Cold Point. Winning the Midnight didn't know that Hyam's gaze was fixed on this airship, and his gaze could not conceal the astonishment, shock, and shock. The military green airship was looming in the snow and fog, and the blizzard rustled down, passing by the airship, and finally landed in the ocean. In the case of -180 degrees, there are no animals in the sky to fly, and the Eastern airship can not only fly in the sky, but also control the flying height and angle of flight, generate heat, and avoid being frozen by the extreme temperature zero. East. If I didn't see it with my own eyes, I really don't believe it is true. This is simply a scene that only happens in science fiction movies. Hyams roared excitedly. He patted his thigh. Very, very excited. We should let the people of our country look at the East now. It's more shocking, spectacular, and stunning than they thought. Also, the people of our country said that the East would ask us for help. If I didn't see it with my own eyes, I would believe it. This is really amazing. Why? I'm not a member of the East, or why does our country keep hiding underground? Isn't it possible to be above the surface? We should learn from the East, learn the technology of the East, and should truly unite and tide over the difficulties together. November 13th, the 7th year of the Ice Age, became a day that all the crew and staff of the Coal will always remember. In the days to come, they will always remember everything they experienced on this day, and their risen sights are amazing. On November 15th, the 7th year of the Ice Age, on the last day of the countdown, the Care finally reached the northern and southern glaciers. After using the special materials of the East, the collapsed glaciers of the north and south were quickly frozen. This scene is amazing and magical, because the glacier collapse of the north and south has become an irreversible trend. However, under the technology of the East, the collapsed ice layer was quickly frozen, as if swept by the extreme cold, and all the collapse was finally stopped. The average height is 4,800 meters, and the highest height is 7,800 meters. They are like dumped buildings, frozen in mid-air, exuding crystal light. Layers on top of each other. All kinds of ice are flooded in this piece of snow, and the weather of more than 200 degrees below zero quickly freezes the surrounding ocean. Although the collapse of the northern and southern glaciers has been stopped, it is only temporary. If there is another major earthquake, or if there are other disasters in the future, the glaciers will continue to collapse and form a super tsunami that will sweep the world. Therefore, in order to survive, we must race against time to build stronger projects that can resist. Chapter 233. On November 20th, the 7th year of the Ice Age, all the tsunami waves completely receded, and the sea level continued to drop. The submerged continents and islands gradually revealed their original appearance, but the world was still almost completely occupied by the ocean and sea water, as seen from satellites. The ocean area is very wide, and the ice blue planet is very beautiful. For a long time, the world has been in the ocean age. Since then, the new aircraft carrier has gradually come into sight. After the eastern humans left the inner city, the transportation was changed from the blizzard chariot to the new aircraft carrier, and the space can accommodate tens of thousands of people. Later, a small travel tool was born. Like the blizzard chariot, it can carry eastern residents to areas, places, and islands flooded by sea. This is what happened later. On November 20th, the 7th year of the Ice Age, calm was restored on a global scale. At this moment, from the satellite, the world is occupied by the ocean, and the islands that the continent split into are submerged by the sea. The only remaining countries disappeared in the tsunami seawater. In the end, only the Rose Country and the male hiding in the ground are left in the world. Eagle Country, and the East standing above the surface. In the end, there was still no resistance to the impact of the 02 tsunami and huge waves. Since then, there are only 3 countries on the earth: the Rose Country, the Eagle Country, and China. After 7 years of Ice Age, experienced one after another, and survived by their own means, these 3 countries are undoubtedly the final winners. In the West, after a nightmare for more than a month, the Rose Nation and the Eagle Nation suffered different losses. Relying on the Ark, the Eagle Nation saved the lives of the people in the bunker. In the end, the 5 bunkers were lost at the cost of 1 bunker. Other bunkers have suffered damage of varying degrees, which is much better than the previous disaster. The 2 major dungeons of the Rose Nation have also lost tens of thousands of people. The situation in the dungeons is a little better than that of the Eagle Nation. Rose Nation has always been unbearable, but the ability to make an ark like the coal is enough to prove the national power of the Rose Nation. After Hyams went back, he made suggestions to Rose Nation. For a while, Rose Nation fell into silence. On the one hand, he stopped speaking, and on the other hand, he carried out repair works, as if something was brewing. And the Eagle Nation is also, after more than a catastrophic month, and the alliance with the Rose Nation was dismantled, the Eagle Nation is no longer the same as before. They will focus more on the project. Existing countries are making changes to adapt to the current environment. The East, as before, renovated during the disaster. After the disaster passed, it continued to renovate the infrastructure without any relaxation. The impact of the tsunami waves, continental steel barriers, separation walls, glacier barriers, artificial islands, sea crossing bridges, ice-breaking aircraft carriers and new type aircraft carriers have all suffered different degrees of losses. Among them, the largest loss is the mainland steel barrier wall. This 4,000-kilometer continental barrier has made too many sacrifices to protect the East. In the textbooks of the East, the mainland barrier steel wall is officially included in the textbook. Become a history that future generations should remember. Speaking of the steel wall of the mainland barrier, 3-year-old children know that without its protection, coastal cities and inland cities will no longer exist. A lot of manpower has been put into the mainland barrier to renovate the infrastructure, and other projects have also been put into manpower for refurbishment. With the retreat of the tsunami and the waves, the environment is finally no longer so cruel, and the speed of national refurbishment has been accelerated. Ying Ziyue sat in an airship, and after the disaster passed, he began to inspect the disaster situation across the country. First of all, the first starting point is Xihai Warehouse. Here, due to the rising sea level, the seabed environment has changed, and all kinds of fish churning in the sea water, forming a spectacle point. But here is still the place with the highest oxygen concentration. After winning the midnight inspection, after researching and drawing up a plan, he moved on to the next destination. From riding an airship to making a blizzard chariot, passing through an underground glacier tunnel, it is as amazing as ever. When you come to the coastal city, the place is basically submerged by seawater, and many places have been frozen. The ice surface is flat and crystal clear and the city is submerged by seawater, forming a unique scenery. The residents of coastal cities will come back here one day. Winning the night, his heart began to brew the next step point. After leaving the coastal city, Ying Ziyue passed the glacier barrier, the separation wall, and finally came to the mainland steel barrier. At this moment, the seawater has receded, and all the brackets installed on the ground were exposed, and countless people in the east completed the work on it, and they were close, and all kinds of beating sounds could be heard, but more of them were the sounds of machines, with the cold wind. After blowing, the sound drifted farther and farther, and then it became fragmented. Point when midnight appeared near a steel wall. Here, the seawater had faded, and gradually exposed to the ground. Then, the rustling blizzard quickly covered it. When midnight arrived, a thick layer of snow had already fallen, and then the extreme sub-zero air quickly froze, and Ying Ziyue walked on the ground wearing a winter suit with an oxygen mask. Creaking and creaking sounded 240 points. Standing under this hard wall of steel, a sense of epic heroism rushed to his face. Point on this steel wall, the wind and snow left deep marks. The extreme cold of that tsunami deepened the marks. Workers and laborers paid a lot of effort for it. Putting their hands on it gently, you can feel the extreme. The cold spreads from the palm of the hand to the internal organs. The steel wall of the continent that stands above the sky is firmly guarded on this continent. Ying Ziyue raised his head, his eyes passed through the clouds and mist, ascended to the sky above the earth, and then watched the earth at this moment from the sky above. No one knew what he was thinking, but his figure appeared very tall in the ice and snow at this moment. Taller than the steel wall of the mainland barrier, and even more majestic. This scene was photographed and left, and the textbooks that appeared in later generations, together with the steel wall of the mainland barrier, will be recorded in the history of later generations forever. When midnight, the guardian of the great country, one of the greatest people, the first person in the Ice Age, the creator of super engineering, etc. titles are all crowned when midnight. In the future generations, the three words when midnight have become a spirit, a will, spread to every household, and they are well known, like a beacon in the dark, guiding the future generations forward, and being praised by the future generations. Chapter 234. Son, should you think about lifelong events? On January 1st, the 11th year of the Ice Age, it was another year of reunion. In front of the steaming hot pot of clear water, Ying Ziyue's family of 3 sat at the table, reunited, and ate dinner. Ying's father spoke under Ying's mother sign point. After Ying Ziyue lived by himself, he was old enough to start a family, and his peers had already carried a second child, and Ying Ziyue didn't even have a girlfriend by his side. No wonder Ying's father and mother were anxious. 3 years have passed since the previous tsunami was unblocked and the world entered the ocean age. Time flies quickly. Seeing that everything is on the right track, there are some things that should be considered. Well, I see. I will go now. Suddenly, when midnight picked up the communicator and said, "Dad, Mom, there's still something on my side. I'm leaving now." Ying Ziyue smiled, not giving her father and mother a chance at all, and then strode away. From behind came the helpless voice of winning father and mother. Ying Ziyue shook his head and walked out of the house. Ying Ziyue appeared on the street. His unique temperament attracted the attention of passers-by. Now he is 30 years old, and the calmness, elegance, etc. given to him by the years have made his charm rise straight. Because of this, the group of old professors and the old dean often introduced him to his blind date. However, Ying Ziyue has always been concerned about the country and has no other ideas at all, so she tactfully refused one by one. The man wearing only a single layer of cold-proof clothes came to pass by with midnight. In the past 3 years, genetic cold-resistant drugs have made breakthroughs. In sub-zero weather, you only need to wear a single layer of cold-resistant clothing to travel. Some people with very strong bodies can even go deep into the sea after taking genetic cold-resistant drugs. And you can swim. The duration varies from half an hour. This was a miracle at -180 degrees during the Ice Age. After all, the weather of -180 degrees can freeze everything. Just before humans wore thick winter clothes, the cold was biting, and deep into the cold of the limbs and hundreds of skeletons. It takes courage to take one step. But now that 3 years have passed, cold-resistant gene drugs will be released immediately after the research is released. After taking them nationwide, they only need to wear a single layer of cold-proof clothing to travel. I believe that with the improvement of Eastern technology and the upgrading of cold-resistant genetic drugs, Eastern people will be able to walk freely on the streets. Just over 3 years ago, when I won the Midnight Patrol Marine Brigade, it was said that one day people in the East could swim freely in the ocean. Today, this step is gradually being realized. When passing by a flower bed, clusters of small red flowers are opening up. This is so magical in a weather of 180 degrees, and how can plants survive outside? This kind of flower is a new species researched by the East. Its function is similar to seaweed. It can produce oxygen, and at the same time, it can also be used for ornamental purposes. Its red color is like a rose in full bloom in the pure white world. This kind of flower is named summer flower, and it grows like a summer flower. Its implied meaning is to hope that the East will live full of hope in the Ice Age. Summer flowers are not only all over the city, but also all over the icebergs and glaciers outside the city. Red and green seaweed crisscross. It is really amazing to watch this scene from the satellite. Moreover, this kind of flower can also be eaten by animals. This kind of researched flower has become a link in the food chain, adding vitality to the Ice Age. In the research room of the Underground Research Institute, plants with such functions are still being studied. They can survive the sub-zero temperature of the Ice Age, provide enough oxygen, and eat animals, etc., which are indispensable. Walking, Ying Ziyue came near the Underground Research Institute. This is the place where Midnight comes most often. Here, even if he closes his eyes, he can get here in a familiar way. When the guarding soldier saw Midnight, he immediately raised his hands and respected him. Ying Ziyue nodded and signaled that he did not need to do this, but the soldier insisted on raising his hand, and then watched Ying Ziyue walk into the Underground Research Institute with admiring eyes. At this moment, the Underground Research Institute is still brightly lit, and has not been closed for today's special holiday. Walking in, I can still feel the busy atmosphere. It seems that I have never stopped. Group leader, why are you here? The professor in charge of infrastructure construction immediately shouted when he saw that he won Midnight. The gray-haired professor looked at the younger generation with respect. I'll take a look. You'll be busy first. Alright, call me if you need to. Group leader, winning the Midnight and continuing to move forward. When he met the Dean of Architecture, the Dean said respectfully, Group leader, today is a day of reunion. Why are you here? I have finished eating and have nothing to do. Come out and have a look. Ying Ziyue said, okay, group leader, if you need to call me, if you have anything, wherever you pass by Midnight, a similar scene occurs. Everyone is full of respect for the people in front of them, and these people are authoritative professors, deans, etc. on weekdays, and ordinary people have no access to make important things. The existence of contribution. In the end, when Midnight came to the conference room, when Midnight thought that there was no one, but when he pushed aside the conference room, the sound inside stopped abruptly. Group leader, why are you here? Group leader, you are here. Group leader, do you want to release another project? You continue. Ying Ziyue said quickly without thinking of anyone in the room. By the way, what are you have been talking about? When the Midnight curious and asked the Daosan, group leader. We are talking about the recent moves of the Rose Country and the Eagle Country. After 3 years of development and lessons learned, the Rose Kingdom and the Eagle Kingdom no longer despair in pessimism. They develop and develop vigorously. They also emulate the East. Put people first, improve unity and cohesion. 3 years later, the Rose Kingdom and the Eagle Kingdom have developed and grown. The Rose Kingdom changed from 2 underground states to 4 underground states, and the Eagle Kingdom castle was also expanded to 8 castles in addition. The Rose Kingdom and the Eagle Kingdom also moved from the underground to the ground. For them, after staying underground for a long time, they almost forget that they were originally living on the surface and breathing free air, even if the surface is very cruel and below zero. One day, all of them will come to the ground from the ground, just like the East, facing the wind, frost, rain, and snow, and will not fall. Chapter 235. It seems that the Rose Nation and the Eagle Nation are ready to fight. Someone answered, I don't know what they are going to do next. Someone said, today, the countries that exist on Earth, except for China, are the Eagle Country and the Rose Country. I don't know what kind of disaster we will encounter in the future. It seems that we need to be fully prepared. Yeah. Leading in the industry, authoritative old experts, old professors, old deans, and commentaries their every move is very important, and a decision can affect more than 1 billion people across the country. Therefore, you need to think twice about making decisions, and doing everything. Therefore, these old professors, old deans, and old experts have even more lumpy backs and whiter hair, not to mention winning the midnight. On the body and shoulders of winning the midnight, the destiny of a big country is on the shoulders. The lives of more than 1 billion people are controlled by the winning midnight. After listening to the scene for a while, when midnight went out. Today was supposed to be a day to rest for when midnight, but when midnight has become accustomed to being busy, and ease is no longer suitable for him. In the days when there are no disasters, when midnight only maintains 6 hours of sleep per day, 243 quality, the rest of the time, are used to frantically think about the future direction, the foreseeable disasters in the future, the disasters that may occur next, how to deal with and other issues in his house. It was already full of papers, but because there was too much paper, he won the Midnight's family and moved directly into a larger residential building. The space inside was very wide. Winning Midnight occupied 2 rooms exclusively. They get through and are used as a bedroom and a study. Ying Ziyue could have lived alone in villas and other residences built for senior leaders of the country, but in order to save land resources, Ying Ziyue gave him to those who need it more. This spirit is worthy of appreciation and learning. When other leaders saw it, they also followed Win Midnight to learn and gave their residences to those in need. After leaving the Underground Research Institute, a blizzard chariot appeared. It was Xiao Guofeng who walked down. Xiao Guofeng was surprised to see Win Midnight and said, Group leader, why are you here? I have nothing to do, just walk around. Ying Ziyue said with a smile, what are you going to do? I'm here to send a copy. Just right. After sending the information, let's go for a walk together. Okay, group leader. After Xiao Guofeng sent the information, he got on the blizzard chariot with Ying Ziyue. The blizzard chariot drove through the underground tunnel and soon came to the cross sea bridge. The endless sea crossing bridge extends into the snow and fog. The wide sides on both sides are the same as the underground tunnel. Many blizzard tanks can be lined up side by side. It is very wide. If you walk on the sea crossing bridge alone, it will be extremely safe. Feeling rises from the soles of the feet. It's building. Walking on the ground, like walking on the ground. At this moment, the cold wind blew across the cross sea bridge, and there was a whining sound. In the 11th year of the Ice Age, the blizzard began to decrease significantly, but it still continued in sub-zero weather. Ying Ziyue and Xiao Guofeng were wearing single-layer cold-proof suits and wearing oxygen masks. At this moment, they got off the blizzard chariot and stood on the side of the cross-sea bridge. From their position, the construction materials used for the cross-sea bridge were the steel pipes are thicker than them. With the buzzing sound of the wind blowing, a sense of epic rushed to the face, and both Ying Ziyue and Xiao Guofeng at the scene were in the same heart. Ying Ziyue looked into the distance, and near this cross-sea bridge, there are several artificial islands. Between these artificial islands, there are new types of ships coming and going, providing convenience for the residents on the islands. In the eyes of Winning Midnight, every artificial island is steaming hot. This is the heat emitted by the scorching blast furnace. It has not stopped for a moment. It forms hot air to fight against the cold air above and bring it to the residents of the island warmth. The Chao Niu passed under the sea crossing bridge. The Chao Niu has just completed a mining mission. On this aircraft carrier, iron, silicon and other substances are carried, which are used in daily life, construction materials and so on. Although the world has entered the ocean age, underground materials still exist. After mining is reduced, all kinds of materials have reached an extremely rich level. It can be said that there are treasures everywhere, reaching an inexhaustible level point. Therefore, the 3 remaining countries on the earth no longer have to worry about material shortages, resulting in slow progress in the project and lack of human daily necessities. But the West is still in a state of food shortage at this moment. They are too far behind the East, although the West has tried its best to catch up. Just standing like this for a while, a thick layer of frost has accumulated on the clothes, and the oxygen mask is covered with a layer of frost. When Midnight said, "The wind is blowing." Yes, the wind is blowing. Xiao Guofeng said, "In recent years, the wind seems to be getting stronger and stronger." Xiao Guofeng raised his hand and gestured. "The wind is coming." What wind? Xiao Guofeng didn't know what it meant to win Midnight, because his main task was to protect Midnight. "Next, we have to start preparing again. Win Midnight," said Xiao Guofeng understood this sentence. His expression suddenly became excited, and raised his hand to make a military salute. Xiao Guofeng said, "Chairman, please give instructions." In the eyes of Win Midnight, the magnificent ocean followed the sea breeze, setting off waves and sounds, and pounced into the distance one after another. Artificial islands are floating in the ocean, their foundations are firm, and they are almost undisturbed. Ice-breaking aircraft carriers and new aircraft carriers pass by the sea crossing bridge and gradually travel far away, and finally turn into small black spots on January 5, 11th year of the Ice Age. A new plan called Hurricane Plan was issued through internal orders on February 1st, the 11th year of the Ice Age, after 25 days of intensive meetings, research, and finally, were distributed to the hands of each chief. On February 5th, 11th year of the Ice Age, after passing through the hands of each chief, it was distributed to each sub-responsible, and then distributed to each factory manager by the sub-responsible, and then distributed again by the factory manager. After the link, in the hands of each worker, only one part needs to be made. The workers were very curious when they received the new task order, but this time they kept it secret. Even the factory manager didn't know what kind of project was going to be built this time. At the same time, the atmosphere in the West has become tense. Chapter 236. At the same time, the atmosphere in the West has become tense. After the Earth entered the dense galaxy, various disasters occurred one after another, such as extreme cold, tsunamis, earthquakes, etc. The Earth became riddled with holes, and once developed countries, the development of celestial homes disappeared incessantly. In the disaster that happened. In the end, the remaining 3 countries fought each other. Eagle Nation. At this moment, the atmosphere in the high-level meeting room is very tense. In front of them, a projection of a planet is projected on the wall. The expressions of the senior executives were very solemn. Meteorologist Yorton said, "As we all know, after our planet has entered a dense galaxy, we will face more and more frequent disasters, and disasters will become more and more intense. To face the storm, but also to face the disasters caused by hail, thunder and lightning," Yeldon said. All the upper floors in the room looked at each other, and then their faces were full of dignity. The new deputy minister said, "Yorton, are you sure? Maybe we only need to face one disaster." Deputy Minister, "I'm sure that after careful research by me and other professors and deans, the following disasters will come to the Earth one by one, so we need to figure out how to prevent the next disaster. It's really troublesome." At this moment, Roddy spoke. His eyes finally recovered a glimmer. After 3 years of united development, the Eagle Nation has undergone transformation from the inside to the outside. It has grown from 4 castles to 8 castles, and all aspects are gradually developing in a good direction. But he did not expect the disaster is coming again. For a moment, Roddy's face was full of exhaustion again. Suddenly, Roddy said, "Dongfang, what is Dongfang doing now?" "East, no action." "What? Impossible," Roddy said directly. "Minister, maybe Dongfang hasn't realized that disaster is coming." "Impossible," Roddy interrupted his subordinates directly. "It's impossible for Dongfang not to move. They must be preparing for some project," Roddy said in a daze. At the same time, the minister of the Rose Country Maximum said the same. Knowing the disaster to face next, Maximum's face was full of gloom. Then, He asked his subordinate Dongfang about the next move, and the answer was that Dongfang has not moved yet. Maximum certainly didn't believe that Dongfang did not move. What the East did in the Ice Age is often unexpected. Pay close attention to the actions of the East and report to me as soon as there is any action. At the same time, stop construction projects on the ground and transfer everything to work underground before the disaster strikes. We must take effective measures. Yes, Minister. The Minister of the Eagle Country Roddy did the same. While ordering people to continue to supervise the East, he also ordered the project to be moved underground, because the next disaster would have a devastating blow to the surface. Underground is always safer than above ground. East. After 3 years of eradication work, the coastal cities have finally restored their original appearance. The coastal residents who had settled in inland cities in the previous 3 years began to return to their original address one after another, but at this time everyone will find that, although they have returned to their original address, the city next door is still empty. On February 6th, the 11th year of the Ice Age, 7 or 8 blizzard chariots stopped in front of King Cheng. He looked at the city in front of him, recreating its original appearance, and then looked at the drawings in his hand, and looked at it according to the content above. The location of King Cheng occupies the place where they want to build the building, so the demolition is inevitable. Leaving the last photo for King Cheng, the person in charge said, "When will the big army arrive?" As soon as he finished speaking, the familiar rumbling sound came to mind. A line of convoys drove out of the deglacier tunnel, and a giant iceberg ship appeared. This scene is so familiar in the ice and snow. When the large army arrived, the person in charge waved and said, "Go." Rumbling, a earth-shaking sound rang. King Cheng was completely demolished in just 1 week, and the ground became flat. As the snow fell, a thin layer of snow soon formed on the ground, which was quickly frozen by the sub-zero weather. Then, the person in charge of the second link arrived. He looked at the blueprint in his hand, on which was drawn a giant launch pad, and it was this thing they wanted to build. 0 Find flowers. A city can be used for construction. One can imagine how huge this giant launch pad is. The person in charge, Zhao Gang, was surprised and said, "Once this giant launch pad is successfully built, it will become another super project in the East." Zhao Gang doesn't know what is the use of this giant launch pad because he is only responsible for the construction process. After the construction is completed, someone else will take over. "Go ahead." Zhao Gang waved his hand and said. Behind Zhao Gang, a giant iceberg ship carrying various equipment began to unload. Beside the giant iceberg ship, blizzard chariots stopped beside them, and the people who came down from the side immediately plunged into the fiery construction. In the weather of -180 degrees, everyone in the western population must wear thick winter clothes, but they still can't stop being cold and bitterly cold, while the eastern people only need to wear a single layer of winter clothes and oxygen masks. Perform sub-zero operations. This scene is really shocking. Even the people in the East did not expect that one day they only need to wear a single layer cold-proof suit and an oxygen mask to travel and work. This is so convenient. Liao Zhao, do you know what to build this thing for? Someone leaned forward, shouted familiarly, pointed at the drawing in Zhao Gang's hand, and said with surprise on his face, "I do not know either." Zhao Gang shook his head. "Don't you know? Impossible. Aren't you the person in charge? Would you still not know? I'm the person in charge, so you don't have to look at what I'm doing. There are layers of links on top of me. Do you think there is only one person in charge in our country? It makes sense." "What does it mean makes sense?" "Go and work." Zhao Gang waved his hand and said. After the opponent left, Zhao Gang was more curious about the project in front of him. What is the use of this giant launch pad? Zhao Gang was puzzled. Before he could understand, the communicator remembered the voice and said, "Liao Zhao, are you done with your work? Come here soon." Death. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 237. Zhao Gang was puzzled. Before he could understand, the communicator rang out and said, "Liao Zhao, are you done with your work? come here soon. It turned out that Zhao Gang, as the general person in charge, was not only in charge of the launch pad on this side of Qingcheng, but also in charge of launch pads in other locations according to the information Zhao Gang received. There are a total of 20 launch pads spread all over the west of the mainland, within the mainland barrier, and can extend to Qingcheng at the farthest point. Okay. I'll go over. The Hurricane plan began to be implemented, and all links were racing against time. Construction began on the launch pad that Zhao Gang was in charge of, and the next links were also in progress. Bang 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 at the other end of the eastern continent point the wind was blowing. Blizzards fell from the sky. The sky 2, 4, 3 was dim, and the ground was only the endless blow of the deep sea, as if it would never reach the end. Silence, loneliness, and sadness filled the world. I don't know how long it took, and a small shadow appeared on the sea line that was in a straight line point as its figure got closer and closer. A huge aircraft carrier appeared in this space point on this headed ship. The word Scudder printed on it was shining, and as it sailed, the turbulent water slapped against the ship, making continuous bangs at the same time. Behind it, there are 2 identical aircraft carriers. They are the other 2 of the 12 attribute aircraft carriers, Wuma and Weiyang. The 2 large characters printed on the hull are also in shining under the dim sky point. After the Earth entered the ocean age, the area of continents and islands decreased, and navigation on the sea surface became unimpeded. The 3 aircraft carriers sent from the east reached the other end of the Earth almost without circumventing, but at the same time they faced no buildings. Under the navigation of the mainland logo, we have to face the frequent disasters on the sea, sudden tsunamis, storms, and various maritime disasters. Therefore, this is a difficult mission trip. Far away point the 3 eastern aircraft carriers appeared here with missions. They were ordered to come here to mine a substance, and this substance played an important role in the next project point. Therefore, the person in charge of the aircraft carrier must complete the task point after a week of mining and various dangers. All aircraft carriers were filled with this material and successfully completed this mission. Start returning. The captain gave an order, then, boom, the aircraft carrier started to sail, and after a certain journey, it began to sink point. Now that the Earth has undergone a major reshuffle, earth-shaking changes have taken place, whether it is above or below the sea point from the site of Zhao, the captain of the rat. There are mountains after the sea, and these mountains once stood tall on the surface, but now they are buried in the sea point. The mountain is bare without any seaweed plant cover, piles of boulders piled together with the abnormally cold seabed temperature, forming a weird picture. Almost no fish appeared, very cold and silent. The aircraft carrier dived deeper and deeper, and disappeared. The fear at the bottom seemed to swallow every living creature. Point even more spectacular is passing through the submerged city, like watching a science fiction film. The scene before me is amazing, but also full of sadness. The once developed city was eventually reduced to submarine ruins, buried in the sea forever. When future generations came here, they would involuntarily imagine the once prosperous and hustle and bustle here. Point a country represents a civilization. Countless countries have disappeared in the disasters of the Ice Age. Sadness and loneliness fill the hearts of everyone in the aircraft carrier. Captain, someone has sent a distress signal. After 4 days and 4 nights of voyage, the mouse received a distress signal. Point this is really rare for wives and wives in today's Earth. Point the captain Zhao Liang said. Is it ours? No, it's someone from the country of roses. Go and see. Above the sea, the coal was also engaged in mining missions. But what they did not expect was that after completing the mining missions, they found that they were carrying insufficient food. After various savings, the entire ship was in a food crisis. Middle point. So, at the last moment, Hyams with the ship issued a final cry for help. When everyone is in deep despair, even considering the most desperate situation, an aircraft carrier slowly rises from the bottom of the water. Hims, look, shouted the captain of the coal point in Hyam's sight. The sky was clearly dim, but at this moment Hyam seemed to see the sunrise. Point after a while, Hyams yelled, I have seen them. It is the east. It is the aircraft carrier of the east. Hey, what's the matter with you? The communication information was connected, and the eastern mouse made a tearful sound. Point Hyam shouted, I'm Hyams. I have been to the east. Oh, old friend, Please help us. About an hour later, Hyams successfully landed on the Mouse with a few crew members when seeing the Eastern aircraft carrier and the Mouse. All the crew of the Cole couldn't help being amazed and surprised because they originally thought the Cole was huge, but the appearance of the Cole let them know that there is an old saying in China. There is a sky outside, there are people outside, and there is a ship outside the ship. The size of the Zemo is even larger than the Cole. A wave of depression comes from the Zemo, and there are 2 more ships behind this kind of ship, Hyams. As I have seen before, Danfang does not know how many such giant aircraft carriers it owns. It's really shocking. As a professor with 20 years of qualifications, Hyams has never seen anything in the world. At this moment, he can't conceal all kinds of surprises and shocks, and the look of the crew behind him is even more exaggerated. I'm afraid that everything they see today will become their capital to show off in the future. Vegetables. Vegetables. Seeing the vegetables, Hyams rushed forward like a hungry wolf. Ignoring his image point, the people behind him also did not care about the relationship between superiors and subordinates. Like zombies, they picked up fruits such as apples and peaches that were easy to preserve. Some people cried as soon as they took a bite. Woo, I can still eat apples in my lifetime. I feel it's worth my death. Rose said vaguely, yeah, even if it makes me die now, it's worth it. It's too exaggerated. The Captain Zhao Liang looked at these people, crying while eating, and suddenly showed a look of astonishment. Chapter 238. Hey, eat slowly, there is still that on the boat. Captain Zhao Liang said. Hey, everyone didn't slow down in the slightest, and continued to gulp, fearing that it would be too late, and be snatched away by others. After about 5 minutes, he finally felt that his stomach was filled, and Hyams began to pay attention to his image, wiped his mouth, and then began to look at the surrounding environment. Then he noticed that the Captain Zhao Liang in front of him and his crew were only wearing a cotton suit, and they seemed to have returned to normal travel during the civilization period. Hyams was very surprised. He just said, no. Then, he felt the warmth of the room like spring. God, why is it so warm? How did you do it? It's really, God, is this hot pot? My goodness, I actually saw hot pot. Hyam shouted again in disregard of his image, and then swallowed wildly. Do you usually eat this kind of food? Or you can only eat it for the holidays? After all, food like hot pot is too precious. No, hot pot is just one of the foods. We eat beef, pork, lamb, and all kinds of fruits and vegetables during the holidays. These are all too common, and not worth mentioning. Afraid to say the name of the dish, this Rose countryman didn't even know, so the Captain Zhao Liang said briefly. Gudang. With a violent swallowing sound, Hems widened his eyes in astonishment, and said, you said you eat lamb, pork, and lamb. My god, are you only worthy of high-level people to enjoy it? For example, someone at your level. No, this is just ordinary food for our ordinary people. Zhao Liang Dao. He felt that the Rose Country people in front of him were so fussed that they couldn't get on the stage. Why did Rose Country send such a person over? Are you sure? I'm sure. Also, you have eaten, and you are probably awful. Go back to your boat as soon as possible. Zhao Liang finally said impatiently, no, my goodness, please forgive my recklessness. Try to calm yourself down. Hem said. He widened his eyes, glanced at the steaming hot pot again greedily, and took his gaze back. Hem said, how much food do you have? We want to exchange it with you. That's it. There are many crew members on our ship. They are all the same as us. They have no food to eat, so we are willing to exchange with you and use the newly mined material on our ship. What substance? In the end, Zhao Liang did not expect that he would be able to harvest a wave on the way back from completing the task. He thought that the fruits and vegetables he ate were very ordinary, and he got used to it every day. In the eyes of the people of Rose Country, this was more than the material mined on the ship. Be precious even if an apple or a peach. Hyams can't wait to hold it in both hands, watching the Zunyu dive into the water again, as if the sun was sinking into the water, and the cold on his body gradually returned. Hyams embraced his arms, and muttered to himself, one day, I must go to the east to see. Then, Hyams wrote in the diary he carried, on February 17th, the 11th year of the Ice Age. The Cole and the Oriental Rat met, and the East exchanged precious food with us. In the warm room, the hot pot is steaming at 9 o'clock on February 18th, 11th year of the Ice Age. Yanjing Point in front of each community, a blizzard tank stopped, and then began to unload various machinery from the blizzard tank. Old friends, what are they doing? Old man, don't you know? You don't follow the national news? Old man, that's not okay. So, what are they doing? Reinforce residential buildings. Pedestrians passing by commented. Point not only is it to reinforce residential buildings, at the same time, factories from the north, factories in the south, Northern Ecological Park, Xihai Warehouse, etc., are all put in manpower to reinforce them. The whole east was once again in full swing. Point a very magical residential building, with steam pipes spreading, covering the residential buildings. On the residential buildings one after another, someone is hanging a rope, from top to bottom, constantly beating it to make it stronger. Countless factories in the south, occupies a huge area. Beside those factories, giant cranes appeared one after another, blizzard chariots appeared one after another, various machinery appeared, and then began to reinforce the factory. Inside, the workers are working overtime. The roofs, walls, and workers of the factory are also beating, racing against time. Point the Northern Ecological Park has undergone continuous renovation and reinforcement, and its defense level exceeds that of any city. However, at this time, it is still continuously being reinforced. The requirements from the above must be 100% perfect, and no mistakes are allowed. Point at the same time, the same is true for the artificial islands. From the smallest artificial island to the largest island, all are being reinforced, and from residential buildings to ecological park branches, they are constantly being reinforced. Point thousands of resources are consumed in the East every day. During the civilization period, the East was a resource-consuming country. In the Ice Age, the same was true. The resources were turned into defensive and resistance forces. Groups, mining resources from various places, in satellite photography, like a beautiful landscape. In today's world, where the population is decimated, and only 3 countries are left, the Eastern aircraft carrier has gradually become a kind of iconic icon. Later, super projects such as glacier barriers, separation walls, continental barriers, and sea crossing bridges have also been reinforced. Point at the end of its development, all important facilities in the East have been reinforced one after another. A trend that is about to come. All the people in the East are aware that another disaster will happen next. Boom rumbled the scorching blast furnace is very close to the underground research institute, and there are bursts of sound of starting work. Point winning midnight came back from the outside and passed near the hot blast furnace, which brought warmth to every city, and did not immediately reinforce it, but was upgrading it. Point compared with the previous hot blast furnace, the hot blast furnace, to be built at this moment is even bigger, with stronger eruptive force and higher heat. Point I don't know if it's because of taking anti-cold medicine for a long time, that the residents walking on the street feel that their bodies are full of warmth. Ying Ziyue took a look, smiled slightly at the corner of his mouth, and then walked into the underground research institute. How is the research on the airship? Go straight to one of the expansive research rooms, and Ying Ziyue asked. Chapter 239. The initial results have been seen. The grey-haired old professor quickly took off his glasses and said when he saw Win Midnight, "You have to speed it up, but don't work too hard." Ying Ziyue cared, in order to be able to research the finished product as soon as possible for the future of this country. It is not hard, the old professor said hastily. You continue to be busy. Ying Ziyue came out of the research room and planned to go to Qingqing to inspect the progress of the launch pad. I don't think it's possible to achieve it. Lightning is used as a reserve electric energy. This is no longer a technology that we currently have access to. We don't have time to ask for the above, so don't worry. It's better to ask the students below for their opinions. These students are more imaginative and have bigger brains than the others. Can the 2 people who were discussing next to Ying Ziyue were too concerned and did not notice that Ying Ziyue passed by them. The entire underground research room is in a busy state at all times. After leaving the underground research room, Ying Ziyue got on the blizzard chariot and went through the underground tunnel to Qingqing. On March 16th, the 11th year of the Ice Age. 40 days have passed since the construction of the giant launch pad points during these 40 days. Because each giant launch pad has a different location, some occupy the city and need to be demolished and started construction, and some are located in the endless sea, which can only be started after being freed from freezing. The progress of each giant launch pad is different. The same, but they are all proceeding to the same extent. Every worker who builds a giant launch pad is also racing against time, because there are other links to be carried out next. Point Blizzard's chariot was driving to win midnight, and soon came to Qingcheng, the fastest built city point at this moment. After a race against time, the giant launch pad has begun to take shape. Point when midnight got off the Blizzard chariot, and the driver couldn't help but follow him down from the Blizzard chariot. Then, an amazing scene caught everyone's eyes. The use of a city to build a project, and it is only one of them, is unprecedented in the civilization period, and even the Ice Age. Western dungeons, after the birth of the underground castle, occupies a vast area and huge projects. However, it is always below the ground, and above the surface, which is the real kingdom of mankind, and the huge launch pad built, is comparable to that of the Western Eagle country. Castle Point. The Qingcheng, which has a population of hundreds of thousands of residences, is used to build such a giant launch pad. It takes a Blizzard chariot to reach the other end. This project is unprecedentedly great and spectacular. Ying Ziyue looked and saw that the first floor of the launch pad was as high as 50 meters, and its height had reached one half of the height of the 100-meter high continental barrier. The steel wall, gleaming with pitch black, lightly touched it, and a hint of cold came from above. Point majestic and spectacular scene. From the side, a sense of depression came to my face. Point the entire launch pad has 3 floors. The second floor is 30 meters, and the third floor is 10 meters. Construction on the top has not yet started, but the long cylinder drawn on the drawing in the hands of the person in charge points straight to a certain direction. Hey, it wasn't until someone patted the driver's shoulder that the driver came back to his senses, and Ying Ziyue had already taken someone away. Point the huge launch pad occupies the area of a city. Beneath its huge exterior, the space inside is extremely vast. Point the entrance that can accommodate 10 Blizzard chariots walk in, as if entering a new world. It is eye-catching. Point the internal construction is different from the external construction. The construction inside is very complicated, because the disaster that this giant launch pad has to face will destroy the entire East. Point its external construction has to withstand very powerful forces, so it can withstand a magnitude 10 earthquake without falling down. When a disaster strikes, the interior can also be used as a refuge. The huge column in the middle occupies a very wide area and is also the most complicated one. Point the pipes on the ground spread everywhere, and at the same time they appeared under the feet of when Midnight and his group. Point did not continue to move forward because the project has reached the most important link. When Midnight feared that their group would interfere with the work process, so they quietly left. Point after leaving Qingcheng, Ying Ziyue went to the next giant launch pad until he arrived at the largest launch pad, the closest to the steel wall of the mainland barrier, in front of the giant launch pad with an area of 2 cities. This is truly majestic and spectacular. It is installed in a piece of seawater and needs to be reached by a new research vessel. The surrounding area has been frozen to facilitate the progress of the project. Point the cranes and the Blizzard chariots are constantly busy. Point in front of the huge giant launch pad. Even if it's a crane, no matter how many Blizzard's chariots are, it's still very small, because it's really huge. The interior, excluding all kinds of responsible construction, can accommodate nearly 1 million people. Nearly 1 million people can take refuge and survive before the disaster strikes. The project raced against time. It was just the first floor that was just built, and the second floor was only built on a general scale. Everyone is working hard, but it's really huge, so it will take a certain amount of time to complete. See if we can transfer people over. When Midnight gave an order, okay, team leader. Zhao the chief executive, responded point after inspecting the giant launch pad. I left with a boat on the side of Ying Ziyue, but until I left for a long time, I could still see the giant launch pad, which showed its huge size. The west point at this moment, both the Rose country and the Eagle country received the pictures uploaded from the satellite point. They make people pay close attention to the development of the east point, but because the Earth entered a dense galaxy, the entire sky above the Earth was enveloped by a layer of misty mist. In fact, the cold storm above was brewing, blocking the satellite's sight. Therefore, the Rose country and the Eagle country only see the east. On the west side of the mainland, there seems to be some work in progress starting from February 6th. What is Dongfang doing now? Roddy the Eagle country asked. He looked at the pictures taken by the satellite. It was a little fuzzy. East, it looks like a fortress will be built again. Consider again and again. Humane, build a fortress. Why did the East build a fortress? Is it to meet the next disaster? Yes, it is possible. Everyone always thinks that the project built by the East at this moment is to prevent the next disaster, but Roddy doesn't think it. He thinks it's not that simple. The project in the East is definitely more than that simple, and Roddy, Minister of the Eagle country, is determined in his heart. Chapter 240. On March 29th, the 11th year of the Ice Age, the mist covering the Earth at this moment gradually transformed into a thick layer of clouds, which was formed by the rising of cold air and entering dense galaxies, colliding with each other. At this moment, the entire planet is undergoing changes in detail. It is still a desert country, as the place where that tsunami originated. After 3 years of Ice Age, calm here has been restored. The endless deep blue set off with the wind and waves under the sea. Creatures began to appear again. During the 11 years of this Ice Age, not only humans are fighting to resist and defend against disasters, but also animals. Their genes are also changing in order to adapt to the current extreme cold. Just when everything is moving in a good direction, at this moment, a stream of air from above the desert country is brewing. The sky is still dim, but the sky at this moment is shrouded in a layer of mist. The blizzard that used to be rustling down is steadily decreasing, followed by the continuous formation of wind currents. A gust of cold wind is gradually increasing. As time passed by, the place became restless again. The cold wind blew up, and the huge waves continue to rise, moving in the same direction, one after another at a speed visible to the naked eye. Above these waves, a wind eye is slowly forming east. Leader of the report. This is the weather change captured by the satellite recently. Inside the weather observation post above the 100 high fence, the door was knocked, and the human inside the door made a sound and entered. Then someone came in and delivered the content to Win Midnight, who was in the office. Several meteorological experts came at the same time. Ying Ziyue took the pictures taken on the satellite and asked several meteorological experts, from your perspective, how much time is left for us? Several meteorological experts look at me, I look at him, and said, if you estimated conservatively, there are still 3 months, but it does not rule out that other accidents may occur in the process. So, after we have discussed it, at most 2 months, the disaster will reach the east. 2 months. There is no need to continue to ask questions. Meteorologists have given the most definite answer. So, is there only 2 months left for them? During these 2 months, various facilities must be continuously reinforced, and at the same time, new projects must be constructed. The construction of new projects cannot be completed overnight. Its complexity involves sophisticated. If there is a slight difference in technology, all previous efforts will be lost. There is no room for mistakes at all, and there is only one chance. Go to the Underground Research Institute and gather all the chiefs for a meeting. Ying Ziyue simply said. He came out of the meteorological observatory and then took the blizzard chariot to the Underground Research Institute. Before he arrived, some people had rushed to the Underground Research Institute one after another. After Winning Midnight arrived, other people also arrived one after another. The others were really out of reach and replaced by video conferences. The dignified conference room is about to come. This meeting was divided into 3 meetings, and the chiefs in these 3 meetings were all responsible for different projects. The meeting lasted for a whole day and night, and then on March 31st, the highest alarm sounded again. Squeaky streets, communities, factories, military brigades, ecological parks, artificial islands, projects under construction, etc. Once again the highest alarm sounded across the east. This is the third time that the siren has sounded again. The first 2 times were caused by major disasters. This time, the whole country in the east suddenly became nervous again. An announcement was directly spread throughout the east on and off in the form of a central speaker. Dear people of the east, the cruelest disaster is coming again. This time, we will not only face one disaster, but also 2 or 3 disasters. Faced with the disaster, we Oriental chose to confront, resist, and defend. So, this time is no exception. Although there are only 2 months left, everyone must believe that this time they will definitely be over. I, Win Midnight, on behalf of all leaders, make a statement to the people of the East. Everyone, please come on. The steady voice of Win Midnight spread all over the East. People in the East were very excited when they heard it. In their hearts, the identity and status of Win Midnight has steadily occupied the first place in the country. 2 months left. My goodness, time is too tight. My idol said that we should cheer. Then we must cheer. It is incumbent. The disaster is coming again. Are you ready for the disaster? I look forward to it. We are ready, but the Eastern project is not ready yet. So next, we have to do another big job. Fortunately, we have taken a new type of anti-cold medicine. We are not afraid of the weather of -180 degrees. Long live the great country. Long live the great country. We must go all out. In the announcement made by Ying Ziyue, he directly pointed out that there are only 2 months left before the crisis. Time is running out. A pressure will come on the people of the East, but no one backs down. On the contrary, it has aroused the confrontation of the people of the East even more. They have survived the disasters that destroyed countless countries before, and this time is no exception. On March 31st, after the announcement spread throughout the East, all the workers in the East were dispatched again. Workers who were originally on vacation gave up their vacation and participated in it. Workers who were injured by the project directly gave up their recuperation and participated. Even the students who were in class temporarily gave up their schoolwork and participated in it. This is related to the future direction of the great power. There are only 2 months left. Everyone can't hate to have more of themselves, all of which will be invested in the Oriental project. On April 10th of the Ice Age, a piece of good news reached the residential building where Win Midnight lived. Group leader, the directional airship has been researched out. There are also directional rockets, which have also been successfully studied. Okay, start to enter the experimental phase. Once passed, go all out. Wait, after I arrive, we will experiment together. Okay, group leader. At 1 o'clock in the morning, when Midnight walked out of the warm room. Just before, Ying Ziyue had been struggling on the front line for a whole week, barely closing his eyes. Under Zhao Guofeng's persuasion, Ying Ziyue returned home and just had a 2-hour break before calling point. While Ying Ziyue was waiting for the arrival of the Blizzard Chariot, the voice of the entire Yanjing project was endless. Day and night. In such a hot atmosphere, all the doses of Winning Midnight have disappeared. Chapter 241. Squeak. Blizzard's chariot stopped beside Ying Ziyue. Win Midnight and board the Blizzard Chariot. The Blizzard Chariot did not go to the Underground Research Institute, but came to an open space with Win Midnight. Before entering the open space, a stone stele was erected with the words, Underground Research Laboratory Test Base. Many experiments are carried out here. When Win Midnight arrived, someone was already waiting. When everyone saw Win Midnight again, they all surrounded them. Most of the people present were over half 100 years old, and several of them were in their 70s or 80s. With half of their hair lost, and they were still struggling to be on the front line. Chief, you are here, head of the team. You have only rested for 2 hours. In fact, the experiment can be carried out during the day. General Team Leader Win Midnight raised his hand and signaled everyone, no, I'm going to talk. After clearing his throat, Win Midnight said, faced with the disaster, everyone is racing against time. As the first person in charge, how can I continue to rest? Okay, let's get started. If there is no extra words, win the midnight, and cut directly to the topic point. When other people saw this, they immediately entered the state point. The person in charge of starting the directional airship started, after being signaled point. Countdown to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, bang. The directional airship slowly started, and then, the speed quickly accelerated, and moved forward in one direction. Point is successful. The directional airship will become another technological product of China. It has been a long time since the release of this plan. Why is it so long? Because the directional airship is not only related to speed and cold resistance, but also because it is not controlled by humans, but is set before launch. Therefore, during the launch process, you may encounter wind direction problems, temperature problems, and so on. These are all difficult problems before every one point. In fact, the orientation problem was solved in the civilization period, but it was only the civilization period. The Ice Age environment caused great difficulty. What everyone wants to build is a directional airship prepared for the Ice Age. During the firing range, the directional airship successfully reached the location point. Bang bang bang, everyone applauded, and the first test of the directional airship was successful, which is simply gratifying. However, the present Win Midnight frowned and said, have you ever considered a question? Although the directional airship is born out of hail resistance, can the directional airship reach the location under a strong storm? As soon as the words of Win Midnight came out, everyone was silent. We have also considered this issue. If the storm is set at level 5 or 6, it is completely acceptable. What about the rockets? Rockets are fine too. Then if the storm reaches 9th level, 10th level, or even a larger storm, have you considered this issue? The voice of Win Midnight fell, and everyone looked at each other. No one said that. If it is the 9th level and the 10th level, not only the directional airship, but also the directional rockets, other heavyweight buildings will also be lifted off, making it impossible to reach the set location. Ying Ziyue sighed slightly and said, dear professors and deans have worked hard. I hope you can hurry up. The future of the country depends on you, because it is not the main research aspect of Win Midnight. There is nothing we can do to Win Midnight. The old professors and deans bowed their heads in shame. Watching Win Midnight leave. Just as Win Midnight is about to board the blizzard chariot, suddenly someone is weak. Please wait a minute. I have a way. Li Zixun. What are you fooling around? How old are you? Can you solve this kind of problem? Yes. Don't disturb the team leader's rest. Li Zixun. You are just an intern. Do your own thing. Don't mess around. But, Li Zixun, a 20-year-old university intern, flushed, opened his mouth, and closed it again. You said you have a way. What way? At this moment, a gentle voice sounded from the top of his head. Across the oxygen mask, Ying Ziyue raised a gentle smile, looking at Li Zixun, as if he had seen himself in college, at an unbelievable age, and once young. When Li Zixun saw the idol standing in front of him, he immediately said incoherently, excitedly, I really adore idols. I hope that one day, I will become you, me, and me. Li Zixun, what are you talking about? It's okay, you can let him talk. When Midnight raised his hand, and said in a gentle voice. Unexpectedly, that idols are so approachable. Li Zixun paused, and finally said what he felt, saying, idol, I hope to become you one day and work hard to serve the country. Well, as long as you work hard, there will be a realization. Yeah, my way is. Li Zixun confided his idea, and when he asked the instructor about this method, the instructor thought it was not feasible, and was rejected. This time he said it again, and the other instructors frowned. Li Zixun, this method really doesn't work. Yes, let the team leader go back and rest. Li Zixun, stop messing around. Is it really bad? Li Zixun lowered his head in loss. How can I know if I don't really test it? Give him a laboratory for him to test it. At this time, Ying Ziyue said. Everyone present was very surprised. Ying Ziyue patted Li Zixun on the shoulder and said, everyone has come from the age of 20. I know you need this opportunity. Then I will give you this opportunity to prove yourself. Hearing these words, Li Zixun immediately burst into tears. He raised his hand and made a military salute. "Chief, I promise to complete the task." Ying Ziyue would never think that, because he made a high-level talent for the country with a simple sentence and a sentence of approval today. Later, Li Zixuan climbed all the way to the professor level. Whenever he thought of this sentence, he could not help but say, "Yes. Idol has made me who I'm today." On April 29th, the 11th year of the Ice Age, a month countdown to the disaster, the directional airship and directional rocket developed to resist hail were finally successfully developed. On April 30th, the non-stop production began. After all the workers received the order, they began to race against time. The working time was adjusted from 12 hours to 14 hours. All this is for the next disaster. Everyone must go all out. On May 6th, the 11th year of the Ice Age, the first batch of directional airships and directional rockets were completed and shipped successfully. Death Chapter 242. Rumble just after it subsided. Early in the morning, the violent rumbling sound rang again. Elementary school student Wang Xiaoming was woken up as soon as he was about to rest. After going to the toilet, Wang Xiaoming leaned over the window to look and saw a small rocket carrying a small rocket above the blizzard chariot appeared on the street. "Wang Xiaoming, come down quickly." The residents downstairs, Wang Xiaoming's classmate shouted, "Come. Here comes." Classmate Wang Xiaoming cleaned up casually and rushed down the residential building. Then, an amazing scene happened before his eyes. On the wide street, above the blizzard chariots that had been driving on weekdays, small rockets appeared, about 15 meters away. On the red surface, 3 words were printed, Vostok. Each one is 12471. After another passed in front of Wang Xiaoming. In the early morning, when the lighthouse was turned on, the boats were shining brightly, magnifying in Wang Xiaoming's eyes. Wang Xiaoming, who was born in the Ice Age, is covered with white snow and a temperature of -180 degrees. Rockets can also appear on the streets casually. In his mind, it seemed to be a very common thing. But at the same time, it is also very amazing and very yearning. In Wang Xiaoming's heart, he aspires to be a member of Blizzard. In the Ice Age, the star industry lags far behind, and in the state of vigorous publicity and praise, all the scientists, teachers, engineers, and other industries who have made major contributions to the major power projects are ranked first and become idols in many people's hearts. He was just a Blizzard chariot driver, but the person who died for the national project and transporting various important materials was also marked as a hero. Therefore, Wang Xiaoming aspires to be a member of Blizzard Chariots, and he also wants to be a hero. Look, because there are not a few people awakened by the rumbling, most of them are elementary school students, junior high school students, the elderly, pregnant women, etc. Everyone ran from the residential building to the street, and then they saw the sky airships flew by. The light is dim, but everyone can still see the airships and the rockets tied below them. These rockets are much larger than those carried by Blizzard chariots. They are carried by airships to their destinations. This is only the first batch of rockets. There are also the second batch, the third batch, the fourth batch, etc. At the same time, the largest rocket has already been issued. In addition to rockets, there are directional airships. The directional airship has also been researched and transported to its destination point. Because of the size of the directional airship, after the first batch of directional airships were researched out, they were transported onto the iceberg giant ship. The sound of rumbling, accompanied by the sound of various constructions in the city, the giant iceberg ship appeared at the gate of the southern factory, and then, under the orderly progress of each link, the directional airships were cautiously carried on the iceberg giant ship. Be careful, this batch of supplies is too important. Don't mess it up. The instructions were repeated again and again, and I did not tire of it. Everyone is very nervous, cautious, and treated as a major event in life. Finally, the first batch of directional airships were transported to the giant iceberg ship, and the next steps were handed over to the people on the giant iceberg ship. Rumble after the giant iceberg ship was activated, in the stunning eyes of everyone, head to the destination. The huge iceberg ship attracted the pedestrians onlookers on the road, and then passed through the long streets. Out of the city, a piece of ice and snow covered its face, the iceberg giant ship gliding on the ice, and then drove into the underground glacier tunnel. No matter how many times you pass through the underground glacier tunnel, You will never get tired of it. This is the idea of almost everyone from the East Point. The underground glacier tunnel is crystal clear and beautiful, like a palace. Very magical point. The giant iceberg was driving in it, and the blizzard chariots on the opposite side and the blizzard chariots next to them all gave way, letting the giant iceberg go ahead. Point. Because everyone knows that every time the iceberg is on a trip, there must be a task, and everything is given way to the task. Because this may be related to the destiny of the country, and no sloppy is allowed. Point. This is the idea. Except for the cause of the disaster, almost no mistakes occurred during the trip of the iceberg giant ship. Point. Boom. After a long corridor, the iceberg giant ship sailed out of the exit and entered the first destination. Point. The same as the purpose of the directional rocket. The directional airship needs to be installed in the planned location in advance, and the planned location has been cleared out long ago. There are special personnel waiting for the iceberg giant ship to arrive, and after it is unloaded, the handover can be successfully completed. One link after another, from designing to making a model to the successful test, putting into batch production, shipping, installing, then performing the test after installation, then maintaining, and finally to the disaster, opening, adjusting, recycling. All linking the links together is very cumbersome, but crucial. Point. Because this is a matter of the destiny of the country, there can be no sloppy in any link. Point. The directional airship was unloaded, and the giant iceberg ship swiftly left after the handover to the next destination. Point. Under the command of the scientific researchers, the workers who followed them during the installation carefully moved the directional airship. Point. Next to the location where the directional airship was installed, the first batch of rockets produced have been successfully installed. Point. According to the plan, the volume of this batch of rockets is only about 15 meters, which is the same as the directional airship used to resist hail. On May 10th, the 11th year of the Ice Age, there were about 20 days before the disaster reached the east. At this moment, above the desert country, a wind eye has been formed, the surrounding air surging and tumbling. The violent cold wind tears everything up and winds up the seawater. As the wind eye gradually expands, a water column is formed, and then it is swept away. Into it, more and more seawater was swept in. As the wind became bigger and bigger, a giant water column began to form and began to move. When it left from above the desert country, the seawater of the desert country, the overall position has dropped by 30 meters, while the depth of the sea in the desert country is only 100 meters at the same time. The sky over the next Ceres kingdom was densely covered with dark clouds, black clouds surging and rolling, and purple lightning flashed through it from time to time. As time passed, a small piece of hail fell on the water with snowflakes, and then countless hailstones began to come down cracklingly. At first, it was only the size of an egg, and then it became the size of a basketball. With the surging of black clouds, the volume of the hailstones became larger and larger, and some of them have developed into the size of the bicycle wheel. Is really scary. Point. Two extreme weathers happened at the same time, and began to sweep everything on the earth. Chapter 243. On May 11th, the 11th year of the Ice Age, the first giant launch pad in Qingcheng was successfully constructed. Point. On May 12th, the 11th year of the Ice Age, the second and third giant launch pads were successfully constructed. Point. On May 13th, the 11th year of the Ice Age, a giant launch pad 500 kilometers away from Qingcheng was successfully constructed. Point. On May 16th, the 11th year of the Ice Age, the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th giant launch pads were successfully constructed at the same time, until May 20th of the 11th year. The last giant launch pad, also the largest giant launch pad, was officially completed more than 10 days before the disaster arrived. On May 21st, the 11th year of the Ice Age, Dongfang's live broadcast was launched again. Point. Countless reporters rode blizzard tanks to the giant launch pad with the largest area of 20 giant launch pads. As the blizzard tanks approached their destination, everyone couldn't help but stare in disbelief. I point a long cannon made of steel points to the sky and the earth, and I don't know how much it extends. Below the cannon is a launch pad composed of 302 floors. The overall height is 100 meters, which is close to the height of the mainland's steel wall. visible, majestic and spectacular. This kind of project has not been constructed since the civilization period, and it is unexpected that one day it will appear on the eastern land point. The reporters have changed from the excitement of coming here to shock, surprise, to incredible, and then to inner excitement. Everyone is looking forward to it, and they will reach their destination soon. When they reach their destination, they really feel what majestic is. The giant launch pads covering 2 cities require a long distance even to start the blizzard chariot. After half an hour of effort, the reporters appeared under the launch pad to truly feel what is insignificance and what is magnificent. What is towering? Pointer dumping momentum rushed towards his face, standing on the side of the wall. Everyone couldn't help but back up. Pointer heavy feeling weighed on everyone's heart, and all the reporters were speechless for a moment. Pointer reporter was the first to come back to his senses, and couldn't help but breathe out the fragrance. I'm going. I rely on it. It's too big. The top student was so shocked that he could only use 5 words to describe everything he was facing at the moment. The reporters who shared his heart nodded wildly in agreement. Then, everyone who reacted immediately took a picture at the giant launch pad, or pointed the camera at the launch pad. However, in order to include this giant launch pad covering an area of 2 cities, they need to drive a long distance away from here, so that the lens can barely cover it, and close range shooting can only reach the tip of the iceberg. This is simply a miracle, unprecedented. When the reporters knew in advance that in addition to the launching function, this giant launch pad could accommodate nearly 1 million people for refuge, and was able to withstand a magnitude 10 earthquake, they were shocked and surprised again. It turns out that the launch pad still has this kind of function. My goodness, the great country is really amazing. If it were put in the past, I can't believe that there will be such a project in the East. Nothing is impossible. It's just because of the situation that has inspired our Eastern potential. Yes, the head of the special research team is here to win. Midnight. Fast. The live broadcast was officially launched at 12 o'clock noon on May 21st, the 11th year of the Ice Age. First, the live broadcast was broadcast with satellite lens. Viewed from the sky above the eastern continent, a super project distributed by arrows appeared in everyone's field of vision. What is this? At the same time, Western broadcasting was also started. Roddy, the Eagle country, saw the project under the Orient satellite, which was presented in the lens with the arrow-shaped division, and its direction was straight to the west. Is this a demonstration, or is it the Rose country is also talking about it? Dongfang, what are you going to do? Are you ready to go to war against them? As the satellite lens zoomed in, everyone could see that a long cannon made of steel pointed at the sky and was about 100 in length. Then there is the base underneath, with a total of 3 layers, each of which has a different height. The present form is like a 3-layer cake embryo, located on the eastern continent. Since satellites can only photograph the surface, Western people will not imagine how sophisticated the interior of this launch pad is, and the internal space formed by technology beyond the civilization period. There are only question marks left to the West. Group leader Ying, may I ask, did you invent this giant launch pad? After the live broadcast started and Ying Ziyue finished introducing himself, reporters rushed forward and asked, Leader Ying, I have a lot of questions. I want to ask, what disaster is your main purpose for building such a huge launch pad? I heard that this huge launch pad can withstand a magnitude 10 earthquake. Head of Team Ying, I want to ask Head of Team Ying. Other reporters rushed to ask questions. Many questions are also the questions that people in the East and the West want to ask. For the first time, the giant launch pad was shown in front of everyone, in front of the people of the East and the West. It is huge, majestic, and magnificent. It is the first impression of all people on Earth around the world of this project. Compared with the mainland barrier, the impression is even more profound. Because of such a huge launch pad, it is too shocking when viewed from the satellite. Well, I know what you want to ask. Next, I will answer your questions one by one, but before answering the question, I need to introduce this giant launch pad and the representatives behind it who have worked hard for it. They should be more worthy of everyone's attention than these giant launch pads. Win the gentle way of midnight. The reporters at the scene nodded quickly, and the team leader Ying was right. the area involved in the huge launch pad of a city, the effort required, is definitely multiplied by 100 times. The reporters then focused their cameras on rows of representatives, including engineers, workers' representatives, scientific researchers, and so on. Then, I listened to the voice of Win Midnight. First of all, the giant launch pad you have seen is among the 20 launch pads. The launch pad covers the largest area. It covers an area of 2 cities and can accommodate with a population of hundreds of thousands. It can withstand a magnitude 10 earthquake, and if a tsunami comes, it can also withstand a tsunami. For example, it could destroy the entire earth. Just a few years ago, the introduction from Ying Ziyue made all Westerners, including Westerners, feel an unprecedented shock. This can no longer be described by scientific and technological civilization. But to transcend scientific and technological civilization, East, what is this going to do? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 244. It's shocking. This project is really great. Oh my god. It seems to be watching a sci-fi movie. Is this really happening? The big country is really amazing. It seems to go and see in person. In the future, I will also build projects for a great country. When Ying Ziyue began to introduce Eastern netizens, and the audience sitting in front of the live broadcast couldn't help but marvel, because it was really shocking. The data one by one seems like a fantasy. Everyone sees everything in front of them, as if watching a science fiction movie again. However, this is not a fantasy, nor is it a science fiction film. This is true. It is a giant launch pad that is the closest to the mainland barrier and occupies an area of 2 cities. This giant launch pad will be recorded in the history of the East, and it will become another miracle of human civilization. When Midnight's impassioned way, a total of 20 giant launch pads have been built by the labor force of the whole country. I hope that everyone will always remember the days of construction and the days of successful construction, because this is the result of the efforts of the labor force of the whole country. In the process of rebuilding, some people sacrificed, some risked injuries and still persisted in their posts. Some people stayed up for days and nights for a detail. These people deserve our respect. Next, please let us observe 3 minutes of silence for the sacrificed heroes. Ying Ziyue said with a slight sorrow. During the formation of the Great Power Project, under such a difficult environment, some people gave it their young lives, and some people took up their posts one after another. This unity and cohesive spirit should be worthy of all Orientals to learn. Take it as an example, the voice of Win Midnight fell, and all the people in the East were silent. An atmosphere of pain converged over the East. 3 minutes of silence watching the broadcast in the West. There is nothing to say. What happened at this moment? You really can't find any words to refute it. After 3 minutes passed, Ying Ziyue spoke again. Next, let me lead everyone to the inside of the launch pad, which covers an area of 2 cities. Finally, the most exciting moment has arrived. Eagle Country. Roddy stared at the TV screen closely and did not miss the slightest detail. When the Oriental Live broadcast started, Roddy stared at Win Midnight with an oxygen mask and saw the other party's impassioned introduction to the project, introducing the project for the major country, the sacrifice and contribution of the labor force. Then, finally entered the topic. Next, let us see what the East is going to do. The project in the East is definitely not just about resisting the tsunami. Yes, the construction of such a large project in the East is definitely not just about resisting the tsunami. When the Vice Minister saw the Eastern engineering with his own eyes and felt its shock and majesty, he changed his tone and said, "The country of Rose's Minister Maximum is also staring at the screen, staring at Dongfang's every move at the moment. As early as February. Meteorologists, naturalists and other professors and deans have studied and predicted the disasters that will be greeted in the future. The ground engineering immediately stopped, and all power resources were transferred to the underground again to prevent disasters. Reinforce the underground again. When disaster strikes, the Rose Nation can think of defending against disasters, although they also want to emulate the East. What the hell is Dongfang doing? Doubts lingered on Minister Maximum's head point, and now this scene is about to be revealed point during the live broadcast, when Midnight had to lead the camera into the giant launch pad, and then, rumbling, the familiar Blizzard chariot sound rang point as the camera turned. Rows of Blizzard tanks appeared from afar in the scene that the East is accustomed to. The West sees it, and its mind is complicated. What are these Blizzard tanks appearing here for? With 4 or 5 Blizzard chariots side by side, their appearance in line, from a distance, is very spectacular, and the more spectacular is still behind. A giant iceberg ship also appeared. The huge volume gradually occupied the lens as it traveled point. Such an iceberg giant ship, every time it appears, always attracts everyone's attention point at the same time. There were also airships flying in the sky point. In the airship, the same materials were also transported, which seemed to be very heavy. The airship was reduced to a minimum, row by row, and the color of army green was looming in the clouds. What do you want to do with such a big move in the East? At this moment, in the eyes of Westerners, they can't help but be full of questions, until the first Blizzard chariot headed by arrived. The person in charge got off the car, and after that, the Blizzard chariot stopped one after another. After checking the vehicles, Li Liang, the head of the Blizzard chariot, said respectfully in the face of Midnight, the team leader, the materials carried by the Blizzard tank, and the material codenamed Zero Ice, were successfully delivered to the destination. Please check it out. Li Liang's voice was strong and powerful, spreading all around, and at the same time, it was also spread to the east and the west through the lens Zero Ice. Ordinary people in the West don't know this material, even some high-level figures, because they don't come into contact with it. It's this material that solves the problem of glacier barrier connection and the problem of the collapse of the glacier between the North and the South, but it's too rare. Now, after the First World War 3 years ago, the East should be dead point according to the researchers' prediction. There should be no such special materials in Danfang's hands, but at this moment, the special material codenamed Zero Ice was delivered in the rows of Blizzard tanks. At the same time, the iceberg giant ship stopped, and the person in charge got off the iceberg giant ship and ran to the front of Midnight, saying, "Chairman, important supplies are delivered with Zero Ice." What? The ministers Roddy and Maximum who watched this scene couldn't help but wonder, and there, this ship is all. After taking a hard swallow, for Lee's, Roddy and Maximum didn't understand it. Didn't it mean that the special material in Danfang's hand is gone? Report to the team leader. The important materials have been delivered to the destination with Zero Ice. Please check and accept the team leader. After that, the airship landed, and the person in charge of the airship in charge of this mission ran quickly to win the Midnight point. Besides, Roddy and Maximum were completely shocked. They were speechless for a while. Their minds were spinning frantically, and then they called the researcher in charge of this aspect to ask, with a sharp tone, "Didn't you say that this special material in Danfang's hands should be gone? How come there are? And those Blizzard battle scars, airships, and giant iceberg ships are all, in the end, what is going on, Minister? This kind of special material is really rare. Danfang should have used all of it in the previous disaster, and is in the process of construction. Minister, we didn't lie to you." Chapter 245. When the Care transported the Zero Ice material to the northern and southern glaciers, in the process, our researchers had taken some of it for research. There are two kinds of materials, which are almost non-existent in the entire Earth. After the East was used to build the glacier barrier, the North and South glaciers, that had frozen and collapsed again, there should be no more. I think this should be other materials. Then why the code name is the same as before? This researchers can't answer, and at the same time, the West can't know, because since the Ice Age, all countries have been in a closed state. It is too difficult to know the other party's information point. Indeed, as the scientific researcher said, the two materials used by Zero Ice are very rare. Most of them were excavated by the East and used in previous disasters. At this moment, the reason why Zero Ice is carried in large numbers is because of the two materials used. This species is replaced by other common substances, so it will be mass produced and appear here. The country has no shortage of talents. After all, with a population of 1 billion, it is the country with the largest population left in the country. Especially in this environment, the potential is stimulated, and the power of science and technology is developing at a speed exceeding 10 times. Well, comrades have worked hard. When the nitro point, the inventory of materials and resources is handed over to the person in charge of the next ring. The purpose of this trip is to lead everyone to witness the formation of another super project. The screen moved slowly with Win Midnight, and as Win Midnight entered the giant launch pad, the camera also followed in, and then everyone saw a space with sophisticated technology appearing in front of everyone. At this moment, the giant launch pad is not turned on, because the electric energy it needs is extremely large. The resource reserves of the East have always been used on the blade, but even so, all kinds of precision manufacturing appear in the eyes of the people in the East. Inside, everyone took a breath. Under the light of the lighthouse set up in the giant launch pad, various well-made machines are densely scattered all over the place, just like a scene in a science fiction film. At this moment, everything reappeared on the eastern continent. Inside the giant launch pad, is Dongfang making a science fiction movie? Oh my god, what did I see? I seem to have seen a spaceship. My god, oh my god, what is Dongfang doing? When did they have such sophisticated technology? This, in the same state as the Westerners, the Eastern people came into contact with the giant launch pad for the first time. Everyone was shocked, surprised, etc. And then a huge sense of pride rose in their hearts. Dongfang, awesome. China, awesome. As the camera continued to follow up, the satellite broadcast from the west was suddenly cut off. Roddy, who was watching, saw that the TV screen went black. He didn't have time to put away the surprise and shock. Who knows? Roddy immediately shouted, "What's going on? What's going on? People?" After some inspections and resumption, 1 hour has passed, and the live broadcast of the East has ended. Roddy, trash. It's a bunch of trash. Roddy yelled. I just saw the wonderful things. No, I haven't had time to observe the project in the East. As a result, the TV screen is black, and the most important points are gone. How can Roddy not be popular? Like Roddy, there is also Rose Country. Because of the disaster, their satellites lost contact with Unity and only contacted them an hour later. The most important and most exciting scene has been missed. It is the scene that Roddy and Maximum have witnessed before. The space is full of technological sense and well made, which is large enough to accommodate hundreds of thousands of giant launch pads. Tao how, this is to for what? Then, Roddy of the Eagle Country roared. Fight against the storm. Giant launch pad, zero ice, well-made space, etc. are connected together. In different countries, Minister Roddy of the Eagle Country and Minister Maximum of the Rose Country coincide. The launch pad is used to launch materials, and the emergence of zero ice is what the launch pad needs. As for whom they are mainly aimed at, combined with the effect of zero ice, everything can be frozen. Hiss. After the people present figured out all this, they all gasped. "This is impossible. This is impossible," shouted the meteorologist professor. "The power of the storm is invincible, especially the superstorm, which can destroy everything on the continent. Any building will become dust and rubble under the destruction of the superstorm. This is simply impossible to achieve. Yes, this is impossible. The power of a superstorm can destroy everything." Everyone blushed and said with thick necks, "The power of the storm has been felt during the civilization period. It is of the same nature as that tsunami. A famous Indo-3 tsunami destroyed millions of people, houses, and other facilities. Similarly, a storm comparable to the Indo-3 tsunami can be killing millions of people within an hour. Its power, no country can contend." Now, there are people who want to challenge the superstorm and contend. This is impossible, impossible, and it is absolutely impossible for the East to do it. After repeated cold air in the room, Roddy, who had changed his view of the East before, said, I hope to keep the East as a city for the sake of the East's efforts to survive." In the Rose Country meeting room, Maximum also said, Although these high-level leaders are convinced by Eastern technology and engineering, before such a terrible disaster, no one can resist, and will not succeed, in fighting. The ending of the East is doomed. Don't make unnecessary struggles everything. Please God bless. On May 22nd, the 11th year of the Ice Age, one day after the live broadcast ended, the aircraft carrier and the iceberg giant ship outside the east received an order, and all the aircraft carriers and the giant iceberg ship were recalled. Hems, it's time to part. If I can meet again next time, I will definitely have another drink with you. On the coal, Zhao Liang, the person in charge of the mouse, said goodbye to Hyams. Zemo often did missions outside and met the coal several times. The two persons in charge got to know each other after coming and going, so the two persons in charge made a deal. Coal exchanges resources for food, and the most indispensable thing on the rat is food. Hyams felt that he had taken a big advantage. Chapter 246. Definitely, but my friend, I think you still don't want to go back. What do you say? The East cannot withstand the superstorm at all, and even the projects you just built cannot stop the superstorm. My friend, listen to my advice. While there is still a chance to choose, you can choose to come back to the West with me. Only in the ground can we escape superstorms and other disasters. Hyams really persuaded. When Zhao Liang heard this, he shook his head and said, Hims, how do you know that we can't resist this superstorm? No one can survive a superstorm, and its power can destroy everything. Hims said with lingering fear. When he mentioned the storm. Zhao Liang shook his head again. He had a lot to say, but Zhao Liang knew that he could not persuade Hyams to believe in his country's projects, just as Hyams could not persuade himself. Then we all wish each other good luck. Hey, alright, good luck to you. In the pitying gaze of Hims, Zhao Liang returned to the Zemo and began to return to the voyage. At the same time, the aircraft carriers and iceberg giant ships that were performing missions like him all began to return. And none of them were left behind in Yanjing. Inside the meteorological observatory on a 100-meter high fence, Ying Ziyue was standing in front of the temperature insulating window, his eyes traversing and falling below. It was 12 o'clock at noon. When the weather was at its best, the blizzard began to slowly stop following the sudden changes in the weather. And the still freezing weather was freezing everything. In the endless white snow, as a blizzard chariot appeared, and then the second and third vehicles also appeared behind. The vehicles returned from the outside and just drove out of the underground tunnel. The people on these blizzard tanks are all the people from the east. They have just completed the task of 20 giant launch pads. After months of fighting, this is the first time that everyone has returned home. Come home with a sense of honor and exhaustion. Near the city wall, their families have long been waiting here, one by one looking forward to it. At the same time, not only Yanjing, but also other cities, the same scene is happening. In the magical underground glacier tunnel, cars go back and forth. In front of many blizzard chariots, banners are hung, such as Yanjing Fleet number 001, Bicheng Convoy number 003. Wait for the banner. These are all retinees. Under each city wall, their families are also waiting. Early today it is very lively outside the city, and the same is true inside the city. All buildings are still being reinforced. Residential buildings, wind turbines, upgraded hot blast furnaces, walls up to 100 meters high, and all other measures are still being reinforced. It's nearing the end, but the beating, the sound of the machine's operation, is still ringing. Accompanied by these voices, people in the east seem to have become accustomed to working and living. Everything is proceeding in an orderly manner. In this state, an imminent disaster is gradually sweeping towards the east. Buckle. The door was knocked, and Ying Ziyue said, enter. People from outside came in, and it was Chen Zhen, a professor of architecture who was in charge of one of the links. What happened? The report chief. Everything you arranged is already in progress. After arrangement, all residents in the planned location began to move elsewhere. At the same time, all residential buildings and various construction projects have begun to be demolished. Head of the team, I would like to ask, is this going to carry out other projects? Chen Zhen couldn't help asking, because he was only responsible for one of these links, so he didn't know that all of this was prepared in advance for a project. Ying Ziyue slowly raised a smile and said, in his mind, the appearance of the project began to emerge. What kind of project does it need to be installed in the inner city center? Shenzhen couldn't help but talk again. It is not only installed in the inner city center, but also in the coastal area. What? At that time you will know. Everything is still in preparation. Now, the first thing to face is the disaster that is about to arrive next. Why? What else do you have? It seems that when Midnight didn't intend to elaborate. Shenzhen, who wanted to ask more questions, closed his mouth. From the expression on Win Midnight, Shenzhen carefully pondered what kind of project it was. Can make the team leader show such an expression? Shenzhen left, and again only one person in the room. One Midnight. Zero fine flowers. He is used to thinking quietly alone, facing the unknown. Under the fence. It's raining. This is the first time it has rained in this weather. Yes, yeah. What's the matter? It should be snowing in this kind of weather. Too weird. The people in the east who were waiting for their families to return suddenly felt cold on their foreheads, which was different from the feeling of snow. Raindrops slowly dripped from the sky and landed on everyone. Everyone felt very strange that it was the first time it rained in this kind of weather. Everyone looked at the sky and saw that the sky was beginning to be shrouded in a dark cloud. To the west, a crisis was brewing, sweeping every part of the earth. It's raining. Ying Ziyue stood in front of the temperature insulating window and didn't know how long. From the small raindrops, they got bigger and bigger, and finally, under the extreme temperature, the raindrops turned into hail and fell. Zero. This is so unusual in sub-zero temperatures. It's going to start. This is the second sentence. After winning the Midnight stand for a long time. Then, Ying Ziyue left the weather observation room. On May 26th, the 11th year of the Ice Age, the superstorm finally came near the Rose Country. Fierce wind tears everything, and everything in the world is shattered. In the sky, a huge eye has formed, covering a range of 100 kilometers, and the sky and the earth are discolored, clearly at 12 o'clock. During the time when the sky was bright, everything became darker and darker because of the advent of the storm. In the entire sky, only the roar of the wind was heard, sweeping everything. Under the huge eye of the wind, a superwater column with a range of up to 50 kilometers flows continuously from bottom to top. As the eye of the wind moves, the underground water flows also surging. The endless ocean is disturbed and turned upside down. The boiling water, wherever the eye of the wind passes, everything is turned upside down. The ocean just regained a bit of vitality, and those creatures that had no time to escape were caught in the water and died in this superstorm without the slightest struggle. There is still some distance from the country of roses, and the country of roses in the dungeon can feel the trembling from the ground. The faces of the upper floors of the dungeon became extremely pale. Death chapter 247. The faces of the upper level in the dungeon became extremely pale. Their location is closest to the ground, so they can more truly feel the situation coming from the ground. The air fell silent, and about 5 minutes later, a high-level executive said, "Minister, do we want to change our position?" Maximum didn't speak. He continued to feel the trembling from the ground, the expressionless face. No one knew what he was thinking. About 10 minutes later, Maximum spoke, sighed, and said, "Transfer." The projector on the table is putting a satellite to take pictures of the state of the earth at this time. With the broadcast, you can clearly see the state of the earth near the Rose Country at this moment. A huge storm group began to form from the desert country. From a small wind eye to 2 to 50 over time, the wind speed increased, and finally, a huge wind eye was formed, and then it began to sweep through. There, countless ocean currents were rolled up, forming a huge water column, from bottom to top, wantonly raging on this planet occupied by the vast majority of the ocean. Just 100 miles away from the Rose Country, above the sky, the violent cold wind shredded everything, and the huge water column that was rolled up stirred the ocean, and countless currents turned upside down, surging, and sounded the sky. If the scene can be witnessed by people, everyone will be shuddered and tremble at it. Even if they are far away, they will be frightened. But no one stays in place in this situation. Even if it is separated by 100 miles across the void, one can feel a breath of ruining the world. The wind in the air is disorderly, whirring, tearing everything on the ground. At this moment, the architecture of the Rose Country is in this situation, a little shaky. The evacuation of Rose Nation was right. They moved from the ground to the underground again. In the face of this kind of superstorm, they were simply unable to resist. In about half an hour, the superstorm finally came to the top of Rose Country. The entire sky seemed to be splashed with a thick layer of ink, densely covered with dark clouds, and a heavy feeling pressed against the ground, and an aura of destruction swept across the surface of Rose Country. Bang 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 in the blink of an eye. The wind swallowed the buildings on the surface of the Rose Country. The Rose Country took 3 years to imitate the 100-meter high city wall. Built in the east, in front of the superstorm, it was like crisp paper. As the wind swept through, the 100-meter high city wall only resisted for about 30 seconds. With a bang, I was caught in the wind, and the fragmentation spread rapidly. The city wall was destroyed very quickly. It took 3 years to experience the weather of -180 degrees, and all the buildings built under the condition of food shortage were destroyed. The huge water column swallowed all the buildings that existed on the surface of the earth. The Rose Country satellite was photographed, and only the huge wind eye covered the Rose Country. From the initial surprise and fear to the final feeling of powerlessness, the astronauts in the satellite shouted desperately, "God, please bless the Kingdom of Roses." At 12 o'clock on May 27th, the 11th year of the Ice Age, only 6 hours were left until the superstorm hit. Just before, meteorologists predicted that it would be conservative for 3 months, at most 2 months. In fact, not even 2 months. As time goes by, the storm is getting more and more violent, and its speed and degree of destructiveness have risen in a straight line, 4 days in advance. With only 6 hours remaining in the countdown, the superstorm is about to sweep the entire eastern continent. At this moment, in the last 6 hours, the east did not sit still like the west, or gave up resistance. The highest alarm sounded again, and the announcement spread throughout the country. With 6 hours left before the disaster at this moment, all the people in the east fought the final battle against time. All viable workers and labor force are added to the unfinished project. Even children who are only a few years old are also added to the final project. Reinforcement work, installation work, refurbishment work, etc. are still in continuous and rapid progress. The last batch of directional rockets, the directional airship, has just been delivered to the destination. Hearing the sirens spreading throughout the east, and hearing the announcement, there were still 6 hours left. The middle-aged Kindang, who was in charge of the mission, took off his oxygen mask, and a feeling of hypoxia rushed over his face. Dang had been busy for several days and nights, and his mind was immediately clear. He shouted, "Comrades, there are still 6 hours left. Come on, the destiny of the East is in our hands. Don't let go. Zero for our home, our country. We must hold on. Yes, come on, for our country, our home. Come on, The workers and labor from the surroundings in front of them all shouted loudly. The voice was violent, and all the power burst out instantly, mixed with hail that was getting more and more violent from the sky. This scene was indescribable with blood and tragic. At 1700 hours on May 27th, the 11th year of the Ice Age, there was 1 hour left in the countdown. After an urgent rush, all projects have been completed, and all workers and laborers have begun to return to the voyage. It is convenient for workers nearby to go home, but workers far away from home can only choose the nearest refuge. For example, it can be used as a giant launch pad for refuge, and the smallest launch pad can accommodate hundreds of thousands of people. Don't worry about crowding at all. As the disaster approached, the entire sky was shrouded in darkness at around 1400 hours, as if it was going to crush the darkness of the sky, accompanied by the wind from far and near, blowing whispers. The entire field of vision reached 17 at about 0 hours. The visibility is only about 10 meters. Even if there is a lighthouse, the visibility is only about 30 meters. Someone tried to get out of the residential building, but returned soon. Because the wind flow formed by the coming disaster is mixed with rustling hail, the air has become colder, and the oxygen concentration has dropped rapidly. Even with the oxygen mask, I feel unable to breathe. With 1 hour left before the disaster, the environment is already so difficult. As you can imagine the horror. Everyone stayed in residential buildings and homes in accordance with the announcement. The people of the East have done everything they have already done, so let's leave the rest to their super project. Chapter 248. Hoo 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 bang bang bang, all kinds of sounds are mixed together. Ghosts cry and wolf howls. The world is filled with this kind of sound point, as if being in hell, horror, gloomy, terrible, sweeping the ocean, making waves with the advent of the superstorm. That tsunami formed again. Waves of huge waves as high as 200 meters, 300 meters, constantly set off, one after another, devouring every remaining island and land point under satellite photography. The ocean occupies almost the whole world, except for the east, the only remaining islands in the Eagle Country and the Rose Country. There is almost no island or continent. No one thought that the land that could be seen everywhere in the civilization period, in the end, even a touch of loess would become a rare product. Now, the Rose Country and the Eagle Country are swept by that tsunami caused by the superstorm, and almost the entire surface is submerged by seawater. Below the surface, satellites have lost contact with them, except for the Eagle Country and the Rose Country's own country. Know what's under the surface of the 02 point, and the superstorm continues first through the surface of the Rose Country and the Eagle Country, and then through other oceans. There are waves of violent winds, which can reach up to about 500 meters, just like tall buildings in the summer, collapse, and build up, fiercely surging, and constantly slap the sky above, making roars before coming to the eastern continent. The superstorm came over Kawasaki Country, a country adjacent to the eastern continent. Over the Kawasaki Country covered by the ocean. At this moment, the speed of the superstorm has increased to 32 meters per second, which is very terrifying, and it is advancing in a posture of destroying everything. At the same time, what is even more terrifying is that countless currents are being rolled up, and the water column is getting bigger and bigger. With the expansion of the wind eye, the scope of the water column has expanded to 80 li. Wherever it passes, the ocean boils, and a huge vortex is also formed. Where the superstorm passed, the seawater covering Kawasaki Country decreased, and the land of Kawasaki Country began to gradually appear. The land of Kawasaki is barren and ruined walls. The buildings, residential buildings, shopping malls, factories, etc. have all been turned into ruins. In this ruin, buried corpses reappeared along the land. Old, young, women, and men, with severed limbs everywhere. Under the extreme temperature washing, many corpses are still alive, showing a last-minute posture. Without exception, they are all desperate, and can only watch the despair when the disaster comes after the superstorm passed and the water level dropped. The land of Kawasaki Country began to appear. A huge stone monument was printed with the words Kawasaki Country. At the same time, there was a dilapidated tape recorder beside it, accompanied by the roar of the wind. Kawasaki, the country's tape recorder, seemed to be activated, playing intermittently. Kawasaki, Kawasaki Country, at the moment of final survival. Please be prepared. Kawasaki Country forever. At this moment, in the sky above the earth, there are still satellites, and all the cameras are moving in accordance with the movement of the storm. The storm that started in the desert country has been watching. At the beginning, only a negligible eye was formed. As time went by, the eye increased from 20 miles to 50 miles, 100 miles, and then 200 miles. A huge white whirlpool appeared inside the satellite lens. In the satellite lens, the white whirlpool covers almost 1/10 of the earth, moving at an extremely fast speed, and terrifying disaster swept everything on the earth. When the camera zooms in, we can see purple thunder and lightning passing through it, thick clouds, turbulent and turbulent. East, my country. The astronauts inside the satellite at this moment were very frightened as they watched this scene. They held each other's hands tightly and said, "Dongfang will definitely survive this disaster." Another astronaut said, it will. My motherland and I will live forever. My motherland and I will live forever." Bang 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 bang. East. A group of people appeared on the top floor of the giant launch pad, which was built in response to the superstorm, and took up the area of 2 cities, and the leader was the winner. The current situation outside can be seen through the temperature barrier. A cloud of dark clouds, a cold wind roaring, thunder and lightning shuttles through it, flashing from time to time. Even though there is a thick insulation layer, the sound of wind blowing across the insulation layer can be heard, and you can imagine how strong the storm outside is now. In the entire east, no one has come out, no blizzard chariots have traveled, and everyone has returned home or taken Refuge in refuges. Everyone is preparing for the disaster at this moment. And now the disaster is finally coming. There is still the last half an hour before the superstorm reaches the east. The superstorm regiment has not officially approached the east, and the air currents formed have begun to sweep everything on the eastern continent. The artificial islands distributed around the eastern continent had all bordered the eastern continent long before the disaster and depended on the eastern continent closely. The artificial islands close to the west of the mainland undulated with the turbulent seawater. The seawater continued to beat the walls. At the same time, the violent cold wind blew every building and residential building on the artificial island. Residents staying upstairs can feel as if they are surrounded by wind and sea. The feeling of tension and trembling. Everyone is sitting with their families at the moment, grabbing each other's hands. Bang 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 hoo 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 hoo. All kinds of sounds mixed together, like being in an ocean vortex. Adjacent to the artificial islands other returning aircraft carriers, ice-breaking aircraft carriers, new type aircraft carriers, etc., most of which are concentrated in the west of the mainland. At this moment, they are fighting against the huge tsunami waves that set off. With the storm, the hull undulates violently. The crew on the aircraft carrier can feel that they are riding on a roller coaster, from top to bottom, from bottom to top, experienced. The crew also couldn't help but dizzy. The wind passed by artificial islands, aircraft carriers, and across the sea crossing bridge, making a loud roar of the wind. When the visibility was only about 10 meters, the sea crossing bridge swayed slightly. The storm slammed on the mainland barrier, the separation wall, and the iceberg barrier, making a dull sound, and passing by the residential buildings, it made a dull sob. At this moment, the storm had reached its maximum. The huge wind eye swallowed the sky, and the rolled up water column tore all matter. Ying Ziyue looked at the time, passing by every minute point. When the time is punctually fixed at 5:45. Ying Ziyue looked solemn and his eyes were calm. He raised his hand and waved abruptly. The giant launch pad, turn it on. Chapter 249. Hoo 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 boom. Bang. Various sounds were mixed together, and the entire sky was filled with the sound of howling ghosts and wolves starting from the desert country. The disaster struck every area of the ocean, passing through the only remaining countries, the Eagle Country, the Rose Country, and finally passing through Kurosaki, and finally reached the east. At this moment, the superstorm was about 200 miles away from the east. Before reaching the east, wind currents began to sweep the east. At 1755 on May 27th, 11th year of the Ice Age, as the guardian of the great country won the midnight wave with a big hand, huge launch pad, turn it on. It was as if one planet was lit, and other planets were lit together. In an instant, the entire giant launch pad was changed, starting from the first floor. After when midnight issued an order, power was turned on from the edge of the giant 250 shooting platform. Teng teng teng. After the entire giant launch pad was powered on, it made a sound, and then various colors began to appear, began to flash, starting from the edge, and all converging in the middle. This scene is like a science fiction film. Appearing in front of the workers on the first floor, Workerly then looked at everything in front of him. His eyes widened in surprise. In his sight, the giant launch pads after power on were connected one by one, flashing various colors, and various data were beating crazily at the same time. Everything was very magical. Amazing. It's magnificent that can't be described in any language. The light starts from the edge and spreads across the entire giant launch pad, illuminating the entire interior of the giant launch pad. Oh my god, it's spectacular. My goodness. Are my eyes blurred? Is this a dream? Gosh, fuck, awesome, fuck. The first floor inside the giant launch pad, after reacting, kept screaming an exclamation. All the workers and labor on the scene felt unprecedentedly spectacular, shocked, surprised, shocked, etc. All kinds of emotions, all of which they faced, were different from facing the continental barrier and the glacier barrier. Compared with the continental barrier, this adopted higher the internal space formed by science and technology is already very shocking, before it is powered on. After the power is turned on, the shock in everyone's heart will not be reflected until a long time. It feels like being in a spaceship. Everyone has never thought that they will experience it personally. This is only realized in a sci-fi movie. They did not expect it to be realized in reality, and it is their own motherland that realizes it. The workers and labor force who have experienced this scene have not forgotten until they are old and old. Their memories are as vivid as what happened yesterday. As Orientals, they are really proud. In just 2.5 minutes, the current quickly converged, and the entire first floor was all lit up. Various precision instruments flickered and started reading frantically. Then, the second layer. It took 1.5 minutes, and the entire second layer was all lit up. Then, to the third floor, which is the area where they are in when midnight. The electric current gathered from the second floor quickly illuminates the entire third floor. Everything happened magically in front of the leaders of various senior figures. Everyone looked at the giant launch pad during the power on process in shock. Although when Midnight designed this giant launch pad, he thought about the magnificence and amazingness after it was opened, but it is another matter to actually witness it. As if you were in the starry sky, there were twinkling stars everywhere, and then a line connected them all. The light was like the day, and countless bright sparkles. All high-level leaders have forgotten their reaction to the indescribable grandeur and magnificence. Until this layer was fully energized, the sound of diddy diddy continued to sound, awakening everyone. Oh my god. This is the first time I have seen a giant launch pad start up. Architecture Professor Li Liang said, and he exclaimed in gloom, the power required by the giant launch pad is huge, because this giant launch pad occupies 2 cities. It can be imagined that the electricity used is equivalent to powering the 2 cities at the same time. This is only the first and second floors. Adding up the third layer is equivalent to supplying power to 5 cities at the same time. Also, this is just one of the giant launch pads. The other 19 launch pads, together, are equivalent to powering nearly 80 cities at the same time. And this is only when the power is turned on, and when the giant launch pad launches 0 ice. That is the time to truly reflect the abundant resources of the great power. Therefore, after the completion of the construction, the giant launch pad is powered on for the first time. That is, it is the first time it is powered on in the face of the coming disaster. There are a total of 20 giant launch pads. All the efforts and all the hard work will be present today. Success or failure is all in one fell swoop. Everyone reacted and all looked towards winning the midnight. Everyone's eyes were full of admiration and respect, looking at the guardian of the great country who was still young. As long as the other party issues an order, this giant launch pad can conduct its first battle against the superstorm. Bang 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 bang. The speed of the storm has reached its extreme. Soon, the distance from the east is constantly shortening. With only 150 miles away from the east, the airflow of the superstorm continues to sweep the entire east. At this moment, the entire project in the east seemed to tremble under the airflow. At this moment, the artificial islands bordering the east and the west are beginning to show a roller coaster-like state as the sea undulates. Everything within the walls is shaking, and restless the storm blew through every residential building, blew on the windows, crackling, and if it continued, maybe within half an hour, the windows of the entire residential building would break. At that time, the cold wind will sweep through the interior of the residential building. The ice-breaking aircraft carrier and the new type of aircraft carrier were still fighting at this moment. They were violently bumping with the huge tsunami waves that came in. Finally, the veteran crew couldn't help but vomit out. The mainland barrier, the separation wall, the glacier barrier, the dull sound increased, and the storm was like a fist hitting this solid building. The world changed color. All the dense visibility was shortened to 5 meters away. 5 meters away, the cold wind raged, stirring the earth, a muddy state. Wind turbines, lighthouses, and other buildings began to sway in the cold wind. The life species that Dongfang invested in the ice and snow, at this moment, all of them are hiding in the holes they have dug in advance, trembling, and a pair of eyes revealing fear. The caves that did not have time to dig, or were not strong, were blown away by the cold wind, and disappeared into the vast sky. Cruel, difficult, horrible, just when the superstorm was about 100 miles away from the eastern continent, Ying Ziyue raised his hand again and shouted, "Launch!" Chapter 250. On May 27th, the 11th year of the Ice Age, this is a day that can truly be recorded in the history of the Ice Age. On this day, the unprecedented giant launch pad studied by the East and the entire country was officially launched, as the only country that dared to fight against superstorms, and dared to fight against superstorms regardless of civilization or ice age. The word Orient is enough to be recorded by everyone in future generations in the face of the disaster. Dongfang did not evade, did not give up hope, but chose to take up weapons and build one project after another. Since then, countless great projects have been born in the East, surpassing the past and present, and the rapid development of scientific and technological civilization. The national strength of the East has surpassed its strength in the Ice Age when everyone is afraid of fear. Bang bang bang. When the superstorm was still 100 miles away from the east, the wind currents formed, began to sweep across the eastern continent. Point in the center of its eye, everything is torn and turned into fly ash, and the level of terror can destroy everything in the world, even if the East has borne many disasters on the mainland. Barrier, no exception. Once, someone did a simulation of a superstorm, and the result of the simulation was the strongest project in the East, and it was unable to withstand the sweep of the superstorm. Everyone was terrified and frightened. So, since you can't survive the disaster that can destroy the East, take the initiative to attack and make the most powerful counterattack before the storm sweeps across the eastern continent. Thus, the giant launch pad was born. After this move and measure just started to come out, everyone was shocked with the brains and thoughts of winning midnight. In their opinion, it is impossible to take the initiative to fight against the superstorm. Although some people proposed this move during the civilization period, because technology could not be achieved, it was considered that it was possible to fight the superstorm only when technology reached its point. But the power of science and technology, without being inspired by danger, will never be able to make a big step forward. This giant launch pad is a super project that has gathered the strength of scientific researchers from all over the country, working overtime regardless of day and night. Each department is responsible for some details, and finally, combined, after joint research, a super project was born. In the process, I don't know how many scientific researchers have gray hair and fell into their jobs. These people, like super projects, will be recorded in the history of the East forever. With an order to win the midnight, this project that combines the power of the whole country has officially opened the confrontation mode. Bang! A huge force came from the first floor to the third floor. On the third floor, I felt a shaking under my feet. At this moment, all the airflow was concentrated on the largest pillar in the center. A burst of energy gathers on this giant pillar, and then launches it. A mass of energy wrapped in ice crystals flew from the giant launch pad towards a superstorm. The explosion speed is very fast. In the eyes of everyone, if everyone can see the scene in front of them at this moment, they will see that, like a meteor, quickly across the sky, a mixture of -180 weather and strong storms. When the superstorm approached 10 miles to the east again, it finally collided. Suddenly, at the high level where Ying Ziyue was located, he felt his eyes light up. This is the result of the collision between zero ice and the superstorm. Click, a burst of energy instantly broke out in the superstorm, and all the wind flow stopped for a while, and then the water column that was rolled up stopped for a while. Then, like a signal, after the first shots were fired from the giant launch pads covering 2 cities, the next 19 launch pads also bang 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 and started firing. The crystal light was shining from the sky, and everyone saw it like a meteor falling in the same direction, west. This scene is amazing and spectacular. It is recorded by satellites on the ground, and then broadcast to every residential building and every household in the East through live broadcast. Then everyone witnessed this amazing scene together. When the superstorm swept through and destroyed the world, Dongfang still decided to confront. The energy formed by the zero ice material is constantly shooting towards a superstorm, one shot after another. 20 seats are activated at the same time at this moment, just like the special effects in the technology movie. In the violent cold wind, every giant launch pad pointed directly to the west and launched continuously. In the inner space of the giant launch pad, the airflow suddenly shortened. The heat energy and the cold sensation were handed over, and the entire inner space changed. People in the east who took refuge on the first floor of the giant launching station saw that electricity was continuously converging on layers to provide power for the giant launching station, which was amazing. and spectacular, and this is only one of them. A total of 20, with countless electricity gathering, 100 wind turbines that provide electricity for the giant launch pad at this moment, all have been upgraded to the extreme. Over time, the nearby residential buildings started to run out of electricity. This is because the power used by the giant launch pad is too huge. Therefore, it had to be drawn from the nearby residential building. Point bang. Bang bang bang, countless energies are launched toward the superstorm, shot after shot. Constantly sniping against. This magnificent scene is being staged near the eastern continent. Unprecedented point in the project where everyone dedicated all their hard work. Everyone's hopes were pinned on it, and everyone's hearts were raised accordingly. Finally, in the 10th round, the superstorm began to change point just before. When proposing the idea of a giant launch pad, Ying Ziyue once said that when dealing with a superstorm, it is not just a giant launch pad, it only plays a key role, and the others need to be handed over to others. Project. The responsibility given to it by this project is to disperse and freeze the huge eye of wind and minimize the power of the superstorm. Then hand it over to other projects to confront. Now, it's finally time to verify. Point. The superstorm began to partially freeze, and the water column rolled up by the superstorm also freezes at the same time. Point. Bang bang bang, energy is still emitting continuously. Point. At 1900 hours, the first branch of superstorm began to appear. Then, the second branch and the third branch were separated from the superstorm. The huge wind eye is continuously shrinking, the wind is surging, and the huge sea is tumbling. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.